Hello everyone, welcome to Drinks and Mics, brought to you by Nairametrics. I remain Ugo Dre, not Otumba today. I mean, the Otumba vibe is somewhere. Don't worry, we'll bring you back. What a week it's been globally and of course locally. A whole lot of stuff to chew on. And of course, I've got the gang here with me today. And we've got who else? But our special in-house guest, Mr. Samson.
He's not even a guest anymore.
I know.
He's one of the boys. He's one of the boys.
I mean, like we also said, Samson's here first week every month. Whenever he's in town, he's always going to be on this show. He hasn't been around for a while, but we just keep that under the lead. You know what I mean? Of course, I have with me to my right, fan favorite, always on point, Mr. Tunja. I mean, Tunja's been getting some kind of hate mail. No, not even that. He got some very good, Tunji is always on point. I mean, Tunji has my mind. I'm like,
about time.
No, it's the extremes. Wow. It's the extremes as like there's this Tunji is just a fool, and then there's man, Tunji just spoke my mind. I'm like, okay.
And then someone say you talk too much. Like you just why don't you just allow our guests to talk?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's drinks and mics. I mean, if you know what I'm drinking. By the way, I want to say something. No. So we had a record. The last show had record comments on it, and I want to say thank you to everybody from the entire guys. And the thing is, we had comments from South Africa, from Canada. Let's know where you're watching from. But this week, let's try and beat last week's comments. And we will also try to respond. At least I will. It doesn't matter what you say. Even those guys that, even the people that really, really dislike me, I always respond. So
Tunji has the patience for everything.
That's fine. So do
that's what makes it.
Of course, we also got former Otumba.
Former.
Yeah. It's not confirmed yet. Dele has to give it to you.
I don't know.
Dele is the one sharing the Otumba.
So
Dele said I should still, you haven't earned it yet.
I haven't earned. Oh, thank you, Dele. Thank you. What do I have to do? What else to do to earn it?
So you need to give up your Ghanaian passport.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an important condition. Right?
Since they defaulted on the bonds, I gave up that passport.
Oh my God, lots of stuff to talk about. I don't even know where to start, but I think we got to start local, man, and then we'll just segue later into foreign. And local, of course, was the big news during the week. NNPC has a new management. Well, to think about it, to think that we spoke about this last week when each of us was here. Drinks and Mike has got nothing to do with that, of course. I mean, it was just us sharing our own views. But the president surprised everybody during the week, very early hours of Wednesday morning, and announced that he had changed the entire management board. Well, I think board of NNPC has a new chairman, new directors, and of course new MD CEO. The era of Mele Kyari effectively gone, at least from the president's directive. Guys, I don't know if you guys saw that news. What do you think of it? Should I start with you, Samson?
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing that caught my eye was the professionalism of the team that was appointed. Obviously, you had Austin Avoro there. You had the ex-Shell boss there as well. So I think, in my view, that's probably the most professional oil and gas team that has ever governed NNPC as an institution.
That's a big deal, though.
Yeah, and in addition to that, not only were they appointed, I think they were given specific KPIs with regards to production and investments. So it's early days. Obviously, I think the sentiment around NNPC as an institution is almost unanimous within the context of Nigeria in terms of how much value the institutions have destroyed over the decades. But I have high hopes, right, that this is as professional as it can possibly be, and it's why increasingly I'm of the view that why you might not really like his politics. I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu may turn out to be as consequential or at least close to Obasanjo in terms of reform efforts in Nigeria. Yeah.
I mean,
big statement.
Was saying that
big statement.
Hold to a buy.
Hold to a buy.
That's hold to a buy. That's hold to a buy.
Yeah.
I mean, interesting comments there. But I was just thinking, before we even get to the to the so-called board that you say you actually like. What's behind this move? Is it because of the planned listing of NNPL, or is it the fact that the president really just wants to get crude oil production output ramped up? Or what exactly is it? I was watching something with and the commentary there was, look, this isn't really some sort of bold move that we think it is. That, I mean, this guy had retired, hit 60 in January, and actually should have been retired, and it just kind of just stayed a few months after, and then like now. So it's not like it's a big deal. The guy's retired anyway.
Well,
so probably wasn't even fired.
60 is relatively young within the Nigerian context.
Yeah, but I mean, civil service,
even within the US
for civil
context,
service reasons.
We've seen 60-year-old youth leaders in Nigeria.
I mean, that's different. But for civil service reasons, 60 years, you should ordinarily be retired. So I mean, is this really?
Yeah, but even if it's an IPO play, though, what's wrong with it? I mean, my knee jerk was, this is an IPO play. This is before I clicked. Just when you see, okay, the board and leadership has been removed, my assumption was they'll bring in people with better looking CVs anyway for the IPO. But even if it's an IPO play, you know, what's wrong with it? I'm all for NNPC getting IPO, getting listed. I like to think that NNPC getting listed will be an Aramco of sub-Saharan Africa, make the same sort of noise, and bringing the same sort of investments locally and outside money as well. But even if it's a IPO,
NNPC is ready to IPO just yet.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can list by introduction and sell to a bunch of local investors, but if you really want to raise proper capital, you're going to need some global investment bank to underwrite the IPO. And I don't think I haven't seen the books, but my gut feeling.
Haven't they been publishing the audited account?
Well,
yeah, they have.
Let me put it this way: I don't
You don't believe
the
them.
books. Right?
I mean, like, come on. I mean, he has balance sheet, he has probably a loss account.
Yeah. So I mean, rumor has it that there might be a global bank on the right. And I mean, we've seen a global bank in the headlines recently, and rumor has it.
Creating a merchant bank.
When I heard about the NNPC IPO 60 days ago, I heard, you know, what we all
It will
heard.
be good for. I will.
No, he did say.
I think if it comes at a
I did say
decent
global
price,
bank last week.
if it comes at a decent price, I think NNPC may well turn out to be the opportunity of the decade, right? Given the asset base that the company sits on top of, right? And so within that, and obviously there is definitely a lot of fat that can be taken out of that organization. So within the PLC context and a very good management team that can basically restructure the business, I think we are sitting on a huge oil and gas reserve base that, frankly, we've done ourselves a massive disservice of not properly mining. It's a travesty that after 4 or 5 decades of oil production, Nigeria is still at 1.5, 1.6, and we are celebrating getting to 2 million
We're not even
barrels.
there yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So to put that in context, right, we have 200 million people. So oil revenue per capita in Nigeria is minuscule.
Yeah.
So when people say that we are an oil-rich country, I really struggle to understand what they mean by that.
Maybe they mean potential.
But for me, zoom out of the context of the IPO. The Nigerian oil and gas industry will still be pivotal to any diversification plans of the country.
I agree.
Any future growth-led whatever you're going to do, the oil and gas industry will be front and center of every conversation. We were speaking last week about the Dangote refinery, for instance. That is one conversation, because even if we're going to export oil, there's still a local need for crude oil derivatives in Nigeria. My thought is, and I want to be naive, I really want to be naive with this move. I feel this was, I couldn't get what I wanted from the previous team. I'm looking for the team who can get me everything, who can get me the IPO, who can ensure that Dangote's refinery is sorted, who can still ensure that my obligations in terms of the swaps are, you know, especially the futures that we've put on it are sorted. So it's a case of, and you know, we did speak, you spoke about the KPIs. So it's more like, again, I'm trying to be naive right now, you know, and hoping for this to be the reason. I need somebody to make it happen. right? And who maybe he looked around and he found this particular team, and you do see that their CVs are slightly better than the previous team.
Not slightly, yeah. I think slightly. And obviously, I completely agree with you, right? Because I think I discussed the last time that in order for us to achieve long-term stability in our exchange rate, we need to focus on improving our non-oil exports.
Exactly.
Yes.
The journey of getting there, right? In my head, when I really think about FX and FX stability, I think about the sequencing of how you achieve that. Obviously, the holy grail is by massively boosting your non-oil exports, which increases the natural demand for Naira. You get people demanding for Naira. But to get there, you need to invest in a lot of supply side factors.
The money
right?
to invest in.
So right now, obviously, our current exchange rate is anchored around remittance flows and FPIs, right? I think the medium-term anchor is going to be crude oil terms of trade, so either volume or pricing.
Yeah.
And then the long term is the way you measure the success of this strategy is how well we then recycle those crude oil revenues to then invest in the supply side factors that drive our non-oil export. So it's why I see the templates, right? And these guys look like they're executing that template.
It feels that way, right? It does feel that way.
Yeah, it looks like they're executing that template. So within that context, I am optimistic. There are lots of lower hanging fruits with regards to NNPC. I mean, having a national oil company that doesn't drill oil and basically require JV partners to get oil off the ground. This is a technology that is at least 130 years old, so that we don't have a very competent in-house oil and gas drilling engineering team. Frankly, we should all be ashamed of where we are as a nation. So within that context, I am very pleased with the quality of the hires.
Yes.
The only comment I would make is that it doesn't help the sort of Yorubanization.
Yeah, I also saw that.
That has been ongoing.
Yeah.
I personally don't care. I care more about competence. But obviously,
the Nigerian
we
context.
live within the Nigerian environment, and so we need to be sensitive to those kind of things. For me, that's
someone did say the CEO is from Kwara, though.
But Kwara is Yoruba that was conquered by Osman Danfodio.
Yoruba adjacent.
He's Yoruba now. Is it not? Afunja?
Yeah.
It was Afunja that let in the Sokoto Caliphate, and that's how
some
they
history,
became
though.
Muslim, right?
Anyway, back to biz. So the president did
It was
give
part
them,
of Oyo Empire before Usman.
I mean, we all know that story, to be honest. Yeah, and I think a lot of sentiments around maybe the president's preference for people from the West running the economy is well documented. But at the end of the day, regardless, I think we all need competency anyway.
I think what I thought,
so long as they're competent, then look.
No, I think what I thought also, and I thought about it this afternoon, actually, this very afternoon, and I thought, at the end of the day, you want to put your destiny into the hands of people you trust, right? So, for instance, now picture this: zoom out, zoom in. Tunji is president of Nigeria, right? And you then get surprised that I hired this man to do stuff for me. It's not because, I have any particular leaning. It's because I know their competencies, and it's clear to me to be able to know where to place them, because I know this person can do this fantastic. It's another thing.
Obasanjo was able to assemble
hire more than
a competent team that
were quite diverse,
good distribution across the country. Right, I think it's an Achilles heel of this government. We shouldn't downplay it, right? Because we don't know where it will come to hurt them. Right. But I guess obviously the president is not as his vitality is not as high as he was when he was governor, and he just these are the hands that I know, these are the hands that I trust. I don't have enough time to be exactly right. So let me just. But I think, he seems to have consolidated power. So to a large extent, it looks like he's not threatened by that. But if ever there was a threat to his political dominance, I think this is what.
I kind of also think that I guess the upside of all of this is that he now really needs to deliver. Right?
Yeah,
because
so
you have the CBN governor, Minister of Finance, now the chief of NNPC. Minister of Trade, like those key areas.
Full capture.
Yeah, dominated by one side. So, I mean, and these are, like, we all agree, competent people, because actually hardly any one of them you can't say is not competent. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, some people say, well, there are other competent
Competent
people from other
people,
areas
yes,
as
from
well.
other
So,
areas.
but you just got to deliver anyway. And then one of the mandates, I mean, was raising crude oil production to 2 million barrels per day by 2027 and 3 million barrels per day by 2030. Right? And I was reading that, I'm like, okay.
It's not
so all the
unrealistic,
talking point around 2 million barrels per day this year, which was the benchmark for the budget, looks like somebody's saying, look, it always hasn't been realistic.
I think
so what the heck, man?
So obviously, I think you need to think about condensates as well. So maybe they're talking pure crude.
Pure
right?
crude. But even the condensate, is it that much
Even
of a
with
difference?
condensates,
Yeah.
it's always been with condensates.
Pricing wise, there's a significant. So, what do you mean that much of a difference in terms of the production?
Volume.
Not the
Actually,
volume, yeah.
the volume.
It does. I think it has about
there's a big-
200,000 or
About
so.
200,000-300,000
Yeah.
barrels of concentrate in the NUPI.
The targets has always included condensates, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it has.
Yeah.
It has. It
Yeah,
has.
So if you have 2
condensate.
million condensate,
So-
then you're talking about 1.8,
1.8.
1.7.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the budget at 1.9, which they revised, because it used to be 2, I think we revised down to 1.9, I always included condensates.
I always thought that, obviously, in order to grow production, from some of the reports that I've read, you need significant level of investments.
Yes.
As well as also dealing with what the evacuation infrastructure integrity that they seem to be doing.
When you say evacuation, do you mean the theft?
I mean, like,
So it took me. It took me a minute. I was like, what? I was like, which kind of grammar is that? It took me like, what? So evacuation infrastructure integrity.
So if you notice, the one place that the IOCs are still playing is offshore.
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
The place where the IOCs still continue to play is offshore. They've decided to just leave your onshore.
Yeah.
Onshore
But for me, I've
the
always felt
challenge-
like if you deal with the EII,
the challenge with offshore is that the fiscal terms to Nigeria is worse off. Right?
Yes.
And so I really think in order for you to get that kicker, you really need to figure out how to bring your onshore barrels.
But the onshore issue, then the critical issue with onshore is the
Theft?
not just theft,
the evacuation infrastructure integrity. Thank you for that. I'm going to start using that. EII. That's going in my reports. I'm writing my investor newsletter. That's going Thank you, EII.
because that thing is packed with so many things.
Listen.
There's the kidnapping of the
actually, it
workers.
covers everything.
There's
Pipeline
the pipeline
integrity.
integrity.
Yeah.
There's the bombing of the pipelines.
You have to remember that our evacuation infrastructure is still is colonial, right?
Yes,
So when
yes.
you look at like some of the stuff that I've seen, you have like a massive trunk line that is being run across hundreds of kilometers. So the choke points on those infrastructure is a problem, right?
Okay.
But I mean, it looks like let's park the reverse conversation for now. But it looks like since this president came in on the security side, they're doing better. So how they are able to achieve it, I don't know. Maybe because at the end of the day, oil theft is a very large organized activity.
And
So I think the security people would have a sense of who the perpetrators of these things are.
And
So there's a and obviously I think one of the things I like about this administration, some people might find it like a weak point, is they can do deals. Right. So to the extent that like instead of chasing everybody and looking to arrest everyone, if there's a deal to be caught.
let's cut the deal.
To whose detriment, though?
It's to Nigeria's detriment in the long run, but at least in the short, I mean, everyone caught deals. Yaradua caught deal, right, through the amnesty program. I think because of, until we have what I call substitute evacuation infrastructure, right, and I think the PIA also provisions for a change in the way the PML moves to the oil license moves from the OMLs into the PML systems that allow more independent companies to drill the same field. So that should help increase production. It will take time to get there, but I think you have to be pragmatic with Nigeria, right?
Yeah.
And I've always been of the view that if you want to do a deal and you can get 10, and you pay somebody 2 or 3 and the country keeps
7 is
it's
a
not
good deal.
ideal, but it's better than getting 0.
So the thing I was even thinking about is, so my people say the child that his hand cannot hold the cutlass well does not ask who killed his father.
So it's the child that is
The child
that is
whose hand cannot properly hold the cutlass does not ask who killed his father.
That's
okay.
deep. That's deep.
Yeah.
So
So
at
you
this
can't fight
point,
if you don't have the ability.
we
to.
don't have the resources to. So at this point, cutting a deal.
That's some deep stuff.
Keep quiet.
That's
People are you referring to? Anyway.
That's Yoruba people. No, honestly, I really, just as a segue, we need to study our language a little bit.
I mean, these things are
There's
deep.
just so much
Yeah,
inside it.
definitely.
I think it's been lost.
And there's so much history. So
when you translate it into English, you even waters it down.
Say, keep quiet. You can't fight back.
So
Don't
at
ask
this,
any
at
questions.
this point, if the president is cutting a deal,
I'm not saying he is, but
no.
yeah.
If he is, just hypothetically, if he is, you can understand.
I did hear that a lot of deals are being caught in quote to the surprise of a lot of investors, foreign investors in the upstream sector. Like, wow, these deals are lucrative.
Or to the IOCs?
Yeah, to the IOCs, and Nigeria is willing to give away this much. I mean, inside sources.
Because
So
I think
perhaps
we
maybe
need to
that
get
deal's been
production up.
Yes, so when we get production,
And I guess that's the
increase
game. Man. Look,
revenue.
man, just get this production up.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can push for investment, so you can just figure out the evacuation integrity, which it feels like an easier play to do, right? So
really
it's
love that term.
I love it. I'm using it. So my newsletter is coming in a few days.
Anyway, the president did also say. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. I was just going to repeat
The
myself.
president did also
Same thing.
say that NNPC, attracted $17 billion in new investment last year.
17 billion.
Yeah, I really
Naira,
don't know where that-
dollars.
yeah, and that they were expecting $30 billion by 2027 and up to $60 billion by 2030. So I'm just wondering where that $17 billion.
Well, I mean, obviously, NNPC is a JV partner in pretty much all the assets that are mined in Nigeria, right? That are drilled.
So when the money comes in,
when Total announces his deal,
Yeah,
or
you
share
add
that-
it.
So was it the FID, recent
I
FID,
think
FID or so that we
that's
just
probably
heard?
what it is. I'm not sure. but
Probably going to be
I
that.
think that's what it is because they have NNPC is basically a 40 to 60% holder in every field in Nigeria.
So we do have deals to be struck. We need to ramp up revenue. We need to be able to sort out the infrastructure to be able to evacuate adequately. At that point, we can then put in more what do they call it? More modern infrastructure around that area so that we can be able to evacuate oil better. At that point, we can then come back to the security infrastructure and then come and renegotiate or possibly chase out the actors who we cut deals with now. But let's get things ramped up first, and then use that money to do other things.
So going back to the IPO, you said something really interesting. NNPC is over 40 to 60% hold joint JV with quite a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
Imagine the value in that.
So that's what I'm saying.
Imagine
so
the value in a company like that. That's why I think
they're going
NNPC IPO is a
it's
big
gonna
deal.
be big, but the
It's a
problem
big
is
deal.
that the local market cannot absorb that.
No, it won't be
that-
local.
that
Yeah,
kind of-
it won't be
yeah.
local. It
But
won't be
then I
local.
don't think the business is in a place where it will pass
But
the
could you
Foreign
phrase that?
investor,
When you
foreign
say
investor
that
tests.
scrutiny,
Okay.
yes.
Sorry, when you say the local market can absorb that,
Liquidity?
why is it because we don't have the money, or are you using the investment depth of the NGX as a proxy for
Not
this?
NGX. So you just look at the pools of capital, right? The largest pool of capital is the pension fund. What are we sitting on? What, 20 something
22 or so
assets?
trillion.
Yeah.
Let's say
Like
that
$80
asset
billion
is
or
growing
thereabout.
by like 15-20%. Because that asset
Yeah,
is obviously
it's like-
invested in securities and fixed income instruments.
Yeah.
So that asset base is captive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are flows that are coming from new subscriptions and then there are flows that are coming from investment return. So even if I'm generous and say that is growing by like 20-30%, right? So you're talking about 5-6 billion of capital. Some of these will get allocated into other assets. So what is really available to come into equity?
Yeah, you have to look at equity allocation, which is
and
tiny.
proportion of equity allocation. So when you look at that math, a company, I mean, I haven't looked at, I don't know the numbers with NNPC from the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised you're looking at a market value of 100 billion.
Yeah, I was going to ask what's your
Right.
estimation?
And so
You're not going to raise
come
locally.
on, man.
Yes, of
they
course.
won't raise that size, but I'm talking about market value. So I think
You don't think
one will
NNPC is
probably be
valued?
dollars.
it could be worth 100 billion.
Yeah,
of course.
no,
Of course, it'll be worth 100
Andre,
billion.
yes, no.
Yeah, it'll be worth
100%. You think less?
I think less.
We're talking about Nigeria oil law and
I think
JV with
less. I think less. That's about what's our GDP? Even rebase, that's $300 billion. I know market value is often outpace GDP.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I doubt it. $100 billion. I really doubt it. I really doubt it. That's a lot, man.
In terms, I will have to go back and do some.
I mean,
work.
we can look at the numbers again, but
I will come back.
I'll be pleasantly surprised.
Maybe my next guest, I'll come up with a
template
with a potential valuation.
What I think the potential valuation is, given what is the publicly available information.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but I do know that, even NPC does list, it's going to be a big deal. They'll probably, I don't see them, perhaps maybe selling more than,
5-10%.
yeah.
Yeah.
5-10%.
Well, 5-10%, if you're talking
It's
about 100,
significant.
it's still a lot of capital.
Yeah,
it is. It
You
is.
can't raise that locally. 10 billion, can you raise that locally?
I don't think you can raise 10 billion locally.
$10 billion. We can't raise $10 billion.
I don't think you can.
You know the funny thing is that
It's an indictment on the country.
But we have
Yeah.
over 100 trillion,
Yeah.
100 trillion in money supply anyways. So
Well,
what does
that money
say?
supply is in banking system. That banking system, a lot of that cannot be invested in equities
equity.
by
Exactly.
definition. So you really have your largest pool of capital is your pension funds, and then you have your
Equity allocation, asset managers as well.
I mean, the total value of mutual funds is just over $1 trillion naira, right? So that's basically less than $1 billion, right? I literally launched an equity fund in September, and I found out yesterday that my fund is 5% of the total equity AUM in mutual funds in Nigeria in 4 months.
Wow.
Right. That's just telling you the size we're talking about.
Yeah.
The market is just not
It's just-
developed enough.
yeah.
But I'm hoping that because we're on that trajectory of development, and then in 2008, the global financial crisis abruptly stopped us. I have a very strong feeling we're at the cups of.
All right, we got to move on. Talking about investments and talking about size of the capital market, SEC did also gleefully announce that the president had approved SEC Act 2025. It included a number of provisions that I think excited some in the market. I think some of the key ones will be the digital assets. SEC now has digital assets codified in the law. We've always had cryptocurrency in quote regulation. I think the current SEC DG Agama, Dr. Agama Timi Agama is actually one of those guys who is very bullish about cryptocurrency. So now he has that written in the law, and I think there are also provisions around Ponzi schemes and how Ponzi schemes can now be better tracked by SEC. I also saw him on TV recently, and he talked about having both a whack and a bite. So I'm just thinking, what kind of SEC are we looking at now? There's also some other thing around being able to get data from companies that run collective investment schemes or funds about their subscribers, even as far as social media information or thereabouts.
But we already give them that
Yes,
data.
yeah.
So
I was about to say that.
Okay, so a whole lot. So now these things are now in the law. I mean, they're all codified now and all that. So I also heard people say perhaps this is probably one of the best SEC acts in a while. So I don't know what you guys think.
Is it one of the best SEC acts?
I don't know.
I haven't,
I
I
think
haven't
that-
studied it in
Yeah, I mean, neither
entirety.
have I, but I think the idea of, digital assets being codified. What does that mean, codified?
It's in the law now. So
It's in the law.
SEC by
Yeah.
typically sometimes can use regulations to regulate
Rules and
Yeah.
rules and regulations to maybe capture
Yeah.
particularly a new industry that when previous law was written wasn't catered for.
Yeah.
But now that is now catered for in the new law, and that gives them more powers
Question.
to better regulate. So is that good for
Question.
the industry? Yes,
I
sir.
think it's good. Before Tunji asks his question, I think it's good. I think that giving investors or potential investors more access to go into is always a good idea.
Yeah.
I think that cryptocurrency was already getting publicity. It's good on the investor side that yes, now they can look at safer ways to invest in cryptocurrency. So I like it, which maybe I shouldn't, but I like it when regulation comes into some of these asset classes because it just makes it safer for investors. And then on on the legal side or for the countryside, it kind of brings it to the purview, so less illegal activity actually happens around it. So for me, it's a good thing. I don't know what Tunji was going to ask, what question he was going to ask, but
so the simple question is,
if you're asking my knee jerk, is it
just around the time the CBN, you know, I don't know if they banned crypto transactions in the country. That was the thing, right? It was banned. At that same time, the SEC had created a sandbox for digital assets, you know, trying to just study and create regulation for crypto. So it kind of just felt to me at the time that SEC, which was already bullish on digital assets, I don't just want to narrow it to crypto, digital assets, had been bullish all the while when the CBN had placed a solid lid on crypto assets. It kind of telling you that they have different opinions about this particular thing we're talking about. The question now is that, have they agreed? Are they on the same page? Can you go to your bank right now and tell them you want to transfer money to a crypto exchange? Will they allow you to? Because I mean, there was a time we all were forced to sign a document saying we don't do crypto transactions. Is it now reversed? Is that what this law means?
Maybe there's a collision course.
So for me, I see more. So for me, crypto has always been, and I think crypto has always been more of an asset class than a currency. And for me, knowing this SEC, I haven't looked at it, but for me, it solidifies it as an asset class. And what I mean by this is I invest in crypto, but how I invest in crypto is as an asset class. So I go through an ETF. So this makes asset managers can kind of come and say, listen, we're going to develop a crypto ETF for retail investors that want to get involved. So for me, I haven't looked at it, but
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I see crypto as an asset class. So, but you're talking about it more on the transaction side. I don't know whether SEC, I don't think the SEC has a purview of currency. That might be more maybe CBN.
Yeah.
But when you talk about SEC and crypto, I think asset class. So for me, it's a good thing.
The SEC has always been for crypto.
Yeah,
the SEC has always been for crypto. As far back as the first time the CBN put a lid on it, I remember clearly at that time there was a sandbox within the SEC for digital assets. They had actively been looking at regulation. So it wasn't just, it was a weird scenario because there were crypto enthusiasts who were in that sandbox who came out and said, we're confused. You know, we just went to meet a regulator.
In the past, we're dealing with an emperor CBN, right? So there's very limited coordination. Whatever Murphy wanted, he got.
You know, you came up with that emperor.
I know how it got on. I don't know.
Yeah. So like, I do think that, I mean, this government looks like they are having more coordination across different regulatory agencies. So to the extent that it does it, and you then have a CBN that frankly just wants to stick to what its mandate is and doesn't want to get involved in anything else, right? So within that context, I think there will be more coordination. But let's see how, like you said, how
so you don't expect any collision costs between the CBN and SEC, you know,
whatever it is. I think it will be ironed out and it will be dealt with. You don't have an expansionary CBN that wants to be everything: a commercial banker, a central banker, an industrial banker, a regulator of financial assets, right? So I think now there's delineation of rules and responsibility. And frankly, when you think about crypto as an asset class, it falls under the purview of SEC.
Yeah.
I've always struggled with the concept of crypto as currencies,
Same.
right?
Yeah.
So I think the name cryptocurrency has always been quite troubling for me.
Yeah.
But as asset classes, I understand, let's put it this way, I understand crypto more from the perspective of asset class.
Likewise. As currency. Yeah.
I think that's the problem I had with it initially.
Okay.
And I guess we'll be talking about it a little later. That from the beginning, there were two issues I had with crypto. The first was it being a currency. And then this whole conversation around it being decentralized, you know, and you know, when you put the two things together, what you're literally saying is that, because I've historically, I have never seen a slave master willingly give up their slaves without being compelled to. And when I say that, I'm speaking about the countries who are in charge of fiat currencies, which is literally one of the biggest symbols of their authenticity as leaders. Right, so if
just going into this
Yeah.
argument,
we can have it.
So,
we can have it. I'm ready.
if countries, I never saw how countries were going to collectively give up that power to you just because you felt you wanted to be wild and free, But now that it is becoming an asset class that is being regulated, it starts to make sense to me, which of course is why I started to then look into it. And I started to, purchase a significant amount of crypto myself because now regulation is coming in. It's looking more like an asset rather than something that I'm going to use to buy stuff.
The argument for crypto, sometimes people say the crypto was developed to actually not be regulated, right? Wasn't it? Isn't that supposed to be the argument of cryptocurrency?
That was never going to work.
Was made to
That
go
was
on
never
the
gonna-
radar
just
and
so
under
that-
the man.
just to anchor this,
Exactly.
just to anchor this discussion better, right? I don't want us to spend too much time on this, but to anchor it better, now that it appears, okay, SEC now has a law backing it. Where does this leave retail investment in cryptocurrency in Nigeria, and by extension, retail investment in other markets? How does this help capital formation as well? Do we see the next 2, 3, 5 years a new asset class that's going to compete with equities favorably? Is it going to finally just kill off equities from a retail investment point of view, or is it just going to?
How I wish what I'm about to say now is a hot take.
Hot take
It's
it.
not.
Crypto will outperform stock markets.
Nigeria has. I don't have this. There's no. I don't
Are you
have
looking for
facts
the
to back
Nigeria-
this.
Okay.
But I don't think that Nigeria's capital market has more retail investors than crypto.
I don't think
that's not a hot take. That's actually true.
I wish it was a hot take. I wish it was a hot take.
Not a
but
hot take at all.
Understand that it is supposedly banned in Nigeria, but people have been able to find P2P means to be able to trade crypto at very huge amounts in the country, right? And I think making it legal and then finding ways to be able to plug it into, transaction volumes within the country then makes it a bit more legitimate. And you can see, because
So sorry to cut in. What I'm basically trying to say here, right, is we have 3 exchanges, 4, 5, if you include commodity exchanges, right? Now that SEC has included digital currencies in his act, it's in his act signed by the president. We only have one exchange, I think, that is cryptocurrency exchange approved by SEC, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's KDOX or something. So are we going to see more? And you're going to see more. Are you going to start seeing liquidity? Are we also going to see liquidity coming from other African countries?
Sorry, before you continue, that KDOX exchange at what level?
It's a cryptocurrency. It is the only approved cryptocurrency.
Because I'm trying to, because we have 3 exchanges, proper exchanges in Nigeria.
I'm talking about cryptocurrency.
No. I'm asking, is it of the same level with those guys?
I don't know what you mean by of the same.
As in, is it the same kind of licensing, but it's for digital assets?
I don't know. The new SEC Act also provides for composite and non-composite license. And I think composite licensing is that you're an exchange that can basically, host any kind of asset, whether it's equities, whether it's fixed income securities and what have you. Yeah. So, but I think non-composite or thereabouts probably cryptocurrency. So for now, it's just a cryptocurrency exchange, not an equities exchange.
Yeah, your question. I
don't
know. I don't have very high level.
So it's probably too early.
I don't have. Firstly, I don't think I have the competence to discuss crypto in any detail that makes sense for people.
No, we're not discussing crypto. There's an act, there's a law, and we're saying, what does it mean for us?
But I do think, obviously, bringing something under the purview of the regulation can only be positive, right? If we introduce more market participants into the market, it can only be positive, because if you're a crypto guy, you formalize, then at some point you trade equities, you trade fixed income, you trade all that stuff. So I think post 2008, after the collapse of the market, like I can't remember the data, but when I was launching my fund, I looked at CSES data on the number of retail CSES accounts that exist in Nigeria. It's abysmally small.
Yeah.
Right. So retail participation in the market is so small. So to the extent that we can broaden that and crypto can help us broaden that, I think that has to be, in my opinion, a positive.
So again, my question is, what is the purview of this? Because, SEC regulation comes with many things to it. So every exchange in the country has its own statutory requirements for participants within the market. So for instance, this exchange, are we going to have things like market makers on this? Or is it just a platform that is...
I think it's still early days because if I recall the regulation for cryptocurrency exchanges, it was around the same period we also had regulations for crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, these are just mini exchanges. I don't think they have the same kind of sophistication.
Because I was thinking about this sophistication around global the global crypto market, just bringing it to
it's almost like saying you want
to
compare what's this
Binance?
No, not Binance, the one in the US to the New York Stock Exchange.
Oh, okay.
What's the one that is owned by this rapper that NAS invested in? This cryptocurrency exchange in the US.
Coinbase,
exactly. It's almost like saying, come on, not the same thing. But anyway, something else. So something else in the act as well that they also mentioned was legal entity identifiers. I don't know whether you guys know about it. So I think
we already use LEIs.
Yeah, but it's not. Again, it's not in the law.
Oh, I see. Because
we use
LEIs.
But LEIs are mostly European-based requirements. So if you're a company that has some kind of European or
I guess
Western
because we trade with European
guys. So but here
it's not.
It's standard.
So we've just had agency arrangements for LEIs. Here as well.
I think anybody that has been doing transactions prior to would be used to LEIs. It's a basic standard. It's annoying sometimes.
Something else as well. I know you guys weren't expecting this, but I gotta drop it. There's been a lot of chatter around NASD probably being hawked, for some kind of sale. What's funny?
Have you heard about this?
You haven't heard about it at all?
So
there's some talk around perhaps maybe someone buying NASD. What do you guys think?
When I first heard
should NASD be sold?
Who's buying NASD?
I'm hearing it's either the NGX or maybe the FMDQ. These are the two competing exchanges or the largest exchanges you have that could probably maybe acquire it. What do you guys think? Or you want to buy it?
No. I was just curious as to who's buying it. I haven't heard this before.
I've always felt the NASD has a lot of promise because it's over the counter,
So I think for viewers, you should tell them what the NASD is, right?
You see, that's the thing. I don't want to,
Cap.
Why? So
because nothing happens on the NASD.
No.
came from
so people make some good money from
Aradale. I spent quite.
And it's Indomie. Indomie is listed. on the NASD,
Wamco is. Wamco is also.
And just recently, is it NMRC or one of this infrastructure or whatever?
Yeah. So basically, their over the counter system is slightly different from
Are you answering the question you're beating around the bush?
No. I'm trying to say that I felt NASD had the possibility to do a lot more. One, I felt it was the exchange to hold crowdfunding. I also felt it was the exchange to be able to hold startups.
Yeah, it's perfect for that.
I
You don't
felt
need
it was
audited.
Why hasn't NASD lived up to the expectation that maybe a lot of people?
Maybe it's people don't really know it exists.
Is that?
Yeah, I think people don't
is
know
it ever about knowing you?
I think
or is it
people
just
know.
that people are just not interested in equity? Because even the NGX is not as if the NGX is that.
So that's
anyway.
changing. So you have the NGX that is regulated, and within the NGX you have the main board, you have the growth board, right? The challenge that we have is that we don't have the pool of capital, right? That is really focused on that sector of the market.
Okay, I know
right?
what you mean. Yeah,
so
I know
like
exactly
you can have an NASD, but the question is who is buying unregulated startups or unregulated SME businesses? When frankly the people, firstly, the largest pool of capital, which are your pension funds, they are not even allowed to buy these assets anyway. So that you exclude them. So what are you left with? You're left with broker dealers, right? You're left with asset managers like ourselves with very limited pool of capital. I just told you that the total amount of money in mutual funds in Nigeria is not up to 2 trillion, right?
But let me tell you though, something. If I were, you know how you have in developed markets, you have in junior oil funds, right?
Yeah.
Or small cap, micro cap funds.
Yeah.
If I came to you with an NASD mutual fund, would you invest in it? And I said, the investment objective of this fund is to invest in NASD listed. No, because you've hit a good point. You've hit a good point.
No, I wouldn't, right? Because
right,
so the challenge is with regards to governance within the context of publicly listed markets in Nigeria. I struggle, right?
Okay.
So
your issue is governance.
So if you then say I should go basically down the risk spectrum or up the risk spectrum, depending on the take more risk.
Take more risk,
because that's what you do. You have less limited disclosure. You already have a significant what I call buyer agent problems in companies, like having to explain to people what it means to have equity investors in your company, right? We see this in large companies where basically the majority shareholder acts like he's like some sort of lord and is not as accountable as he should be, as you will find in other markets where we've historically operated. So I mean, this is a market that I think it needs to be a bit more transparent. There needs to be a bit more improvement in the governance. And then you're not telling me that I should then buy an asset class that is more opaque.
Yeah.
Right? When I'm not even comfortable.
Wait. But people were doing
assets
it.
in equities.
Let me say this. People were doing it. And I'll say this, right? So I don't know the new NASDMD. I knew the previous CEO, and his ideas were really around this, right? And we saw a lot of it happen with unregulated crowdfunding into agri. That happened like maybe some 4 years ago. That many of them went belly up. Unregulated investment in startups that still happen till now. There are companies in the UK and the US. For instance, there's a company called Cedars. I think it's called Republic now. What they do is a startup goes to them, then they help you crowdfund for. They have a pool of investors who, retail investors who have maybe 1K, 2K checks, 3K checks, those kind of things. And they all come together on this platform. And when they have a deal, they kind of shop it around the platform and people invest in the company, right? This was some of the things NASD was planning to do. However, they couldn't just go ahead and do it because of regulation. They had the crowdfunding law had to be passed. Several laws had to be passed to be able to make all of those things happen. However, I'm not sure if the ship has not sailed in terms of them now being front and center of trying to be that crowdfunding source for smaller cap businesses. So maybe instead of me.
No. So I see, like I am all for, because the challenge that I sometimes have with our regulatory environment is that we tend to overregulate, right? And we tend to overregulate because it's like, well, we are protecting the retail investors. You can protect the retail investors by just having certain caveats in terms of who you market to, right? But if you are able to encourage the intermediation of capital, which is what these exchanges are, right? I'm all for it, right?
Absolutely.
And then if you are marketing to retail, there are regulations around that. I often find, like even when I was launching my mutual fund, which is an institutional fund and targeted at high net worth individual, I did it that way because of the risk profile in the fund. But a lot of the conversations I was having was almost around like I was trying to launch a retail product. Yeah. So you've already basically said that this is targeted at sophisticated investors and institutions.
But you're still doing the
but then you're
work.
Still making me do like retail related work, right? So that's sort of the challenge. Is like once you say something is institutional, like a hedge fund is institutional, and as long as I am not marketing to retail, I think the regulatory burden that I have should decline proportionately, right?
NASD wanted to do this as far back as 2018.
So
the law just got passed.
So let's assume that, okay, this is me assuming that NGX and
I don't see a reason why any of the exchanges.
But NGX has the growth board, so why don't they just encourage more listing in the growth board as opposed to acquiring?
What is the point? And
are you suggesting maybe FMDQ should be
no.
to acquire?
Maybe
should there be a third party?
Maybe do not forget that most of the companies that are listed on the NASD were on the NGX at some point.
Vice versa.
So NGX is
because you also had companies that were in NASD that are listed on NGX today.
My point is, so if you
but the migration should be from NASD to NGX.
It should be.
But Tunji though, why Okay,
Sorry.
let me use you as an example because I do remember the last MD of NASD at one time, probably not.
Egbo?
We've spoken about it once. I'm like, why can't you list our about NASD? Just hypothetically.
So hypothetically,
Why don't you
that
want
was
to?
that was the plan.
question.
That was the plan of the former CEO. I don't know the present CEO. I don't know the present CEO, but that was the plan of the former CEO. And he was talking about, so his plans were around capital formation. So it wasn't just around local investors. It was more around, we do the due diligence on behalf of these institutional investors and then create a proper investment prospectus and be able to send it out, right? To our pool of investors, not only local, but also international, which means that if I go to an NASD with that full spectrum of operations, I don't have to do the work of shopping to 100 investors. NASD does that for me. And it's only when we need to then do the final conversation that I then come in, right? And that is... It does me a lot of help because I can focus on building my startup while they get their commission on every transaction that does. But at least they also help the institutional or the retail investors do the due diligence that the retail investor really doesn't have the capacity to do, right? Because the retail investor will just sit you down and ask you, so what's your vision for this company? What keeps you up at night? I mean, those questions really irritates me, but they can do the proper due diligence, check your books, check your bank statements, do what's your audited reports.
Well, isn't that their job now?
So that I don't know if they do that now.
Because I've always I've always felt like the NASD should take the role of a small business that wants to raise money.
Yes.
Simply put, a small business. I don't have the criteria of the big exchange.
Who goes to that? When was the last time you visited that website?
NASD. I have a guy who's looking through NASD aggressively to see what's. After Aradel, we're looking. We're looking, man. I'm looking. I looked through the NASD to see.
I just said that like everybody knows who Biv is. We have a friend. We have a friend that is always looking through.
Legend of the market.
Yeah, he's that person that he's one of those people that believed in NASD before NASD.
Because I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea.
Conceptually, it's a good idea if you can do the work.
So it's a good business though. Buying. If you could buy NASD, would you buy?
I don't know how NASD makes money, right? So I presume it's standard the way exchanges.
The exchanges,
money.
And so you have to have a lot of deal flow.
Yes, but I'm not confident that they have that, right? So I would rather buy NGX, to be honest.
All right, a lot of work there for NASD.
I'll buy NASD, sure.
Okay. All right. Something else that made the news during the week: CBN finally released its net reserves position for the end of the year. There's a lot of talk around what its net reserve position is, because after that JP Morgan story last year, I think early 2024, if I'm not mistaken, where they suggested we had less than $9 billion or so. $3 billion. External reserves, and everybody was like, what? Everybody was shook. And of course, we all did, in a way, know that external reserves were probably lower than what the CBN was pushing out. But that JP Morgan number just came out of blues and people were like shocked to the bones. And that also was one of the reasons why the exchange rate essentially just plummeted. But now the CBN has put out new net external reserve figure at $23 billion or thereabout. And I mean, from the CBN's perspective, that's a confidence booster. A lot of work has been done, according to them, to push reserves to that sort of levels. And so, gentlemen, what do you think? Any positives in that number?
So,
or do you think should have been more?
Well, no, not more.
From where now?
So I think the last time I think there was a time here I made a statement that something was really puzzling to me, right? Which was when I look at Nigeria's balance of payment, right? 9 months, and I think there's been 12-month numbers now, but I haven't seen the errors and emissions. You had a country that was running 8 to 9% of GDP of trade surplus, right? And typically, when you find that scale of surpluses, right, it's usually accompanied by growth in reserves, right? And I've been really scratching my head as to why reserves hasn't been increasing by a significant margin. I think this partly answers that question. I also think the second part of that potentially is probably the capital flight that was really a function of the subsidy regime and the exportation of crude revenues that wasn't being captured in the official accounts. So now that is gone. So when I saw that number, a couple of things have happened. I had reservations around JP Morgan's 3 billion because it felt like they just netted liabilities off gross assets and came up with a 3 billion number. But really, some of those liabilities were longer term liabilities that doesn't mature immediately. So when you're really thinking about net reserves,
so
you shouldn't look at
a matching problem.
Yeah, you shouldn't look at gross and gross. You should do
yeah.
gross versus what is due within the next 12 months.
Yeah.
So it's quite clear the CBN has been, obviously they paid the forward obligations, most of it anyway. And I know they paid down swaps with the banks as well. So, and I think they've termed out some of their liabilities, right? And in addition to that, when you look at the growth in the balance of payment surpluses, it's quite clear that they've done really phenomenal work. So although, and I think this is why they published this number.
Yeah.
So when you look at the headline number, you keep scratching your head like, okay, something doesn't make sense here. But when you actually now look at the net reserves, right? And then you're like, okay, this is really interesting because they've done a lot of work terming out their liability. And also they've gotten, so in order to do that, they must have gotten inflows to enable them to do this, right? So at 23 billion, we are from 3 billion, that is now a healthy number. So for those people who have very pessimistic views around the stability of the exchange rate, I think, and they'll be a bit disappointed with that.
Yeah.
And also the CBN has been very forthcoming with regards to intervening in the market, right? Because they've been acting like recycling agents because this market is still evolving. So the capacity to absorb dollars or deal with dollar outflow is still being built, right? So CBN has sort of been the recycler of last resorts where if you have a lot of dollar inflow, they take it from you and recycle it back. And if there's a lot of outflow that the market can, because if you notice the market weakens significantly when right? Yeah. So CBN has now been intervening periodically.
When what happens?
When you need to take money
when
out.
you take money out, right?
Maybe there are receivables due,
correct,
bond payments.
So if you need to take money out or there's an OMO and then the OMO doesn't fully get reinvested, and obviously with the jittering around the global risk environment, what was happening is that OMOs were maturing and investors were not rolling it over. And those investors were taking risk off, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, what was happening is that when they hit the market with those offers, the market gapped very, very quickly. I mean, it moved like 100 Naira in the space of a week, right? But the CBN over the last week or so has been consistently intervening. And the debate obviously has always been, do they have the capacity to continue to intervene?
Yeah.
Just looking at that number tells you that they probably do.
Yeah, just some more insights into that number. The CBN did also mention that this was the highest level in 3 years. And apart from that, they did also drop some stats. They said 2023 was about $3.9 billion at the end of 2023, which of course speaks to JP Morgan's analysis as well. They said in 2022 it was $8.19 billion, and then at the end of 2021 it was $14.59 billion. 0.59 billion, and this was around the period where the exchange rate was trading at less than 1,000 to dollar or 500, 600 thereabout. So with this figure now, maybe I should ask you first, Samson, before I come to Arnold and Tunji. Do you think perhaps that argument or that narrative around the Naira being, too weak or undervalued is perhaps maybe correct? Does this support that view?
So I mean, I think I am known as the Naira bull here, right? So so I will continue to. So I do think that regardless of the model you look at, purchasing power parity, import parity, like the exchange rate is undervalued. However, I think that undervaluation of the exchange rate
is undervalued or Naira is undervalued.
Naira is undervalued. That's what I mean. Naira is undervalued, right? And so within that context, right, I do think there is capacity for Naira strength, right? Especially when you kind of look at the conditions of the economy today vis-a-vis when the thing was trading in the official market at on the unofficial market at 750. Because think about it this way. While we had the peg at 400 or 450, I can't remember what it was, there was a significant level of volume that was going in the black market at 750, right?
Yeah.
And you could get whatever size you wanted in the black market at those prices.
Yeah.
So if the black market was at 750, the official market was at 450, right? And that black market included all sorts of premiums, illegal premium, whatever premium it is. You would imagine that if you had liberalized properly, because obviously there was issues around the sequencing of the reform process, right? You could have found equilibrium in between those prices. That's where the true value of the Naira should have been, right? And you could argue that the move from 750 to 1,000, 1,008 were technically driven because of how not well sequenced the reform process was. But we've finally now gone through that. We've made those adjustments, right? I think it is dangerous to make the argument that Naira is going to strengthen to 750. That's not the argument that I'm making. If anything, I think given the improvements in unit labor cost and productivity, I think Naira should kind of be kept around the 1,415 level for a sustained period of time so that we can.
How long is sustained period? How long is the period of time?
That's a very good question. I think that should be really be determined by how much reserves we can accrue, right? My sense is that to really get the economic benefit of a weak currency, you need to keep the currency weak for a few years.
Yeah.
Tunji.
What's the question now? Because what's the question?
At $23 billion net reserves, do you
How much import cover is that? How many months?
So I think we currently
6 months.
6 months, less than 6 months. All right. So do not get me wrong. This is great. But I honestly feel that the celebration is against. This is probably the CBN's.
I don't know if it's a celebration.
This is probably the new CBN's first whoop-de-doo since they came into office.
What do you mean by whoop-de-doo?
So like a celebration, like you know where you know that like ooh, that kind of a thing. And I'm thinking, yes, it's great, right? Fantastic, you've done good. But we're coming from where we are coming from, right? Which was total madness and chaos, right? So if you've been able to steady the ship and get us here, it's fantastic. And I applaud you. I just think celebrating at 23.
But no one is celebrating. Right?
That's
my question.
I'm struggling.
My question is, do you think the Naira is on the value?
Let's not pretend.
The reason
there
for
was
publishing,
a celebration.
The reason for publishing, I think, right, is to basically
Bring everything to light.
Because like
there's been questions around what is the net reserves.
As a foreign investor that is looking at those
Google
numbers, and you don't have the time to do all the analysis that we've been doing.
Yeah, you need to just see what it is.
You need to see what it is.
Yeah.
I think this makes sense because the question that everybody's saying, like if you go to New York and say, well, my current account surplus is 13 billion, right? And then the next question that somebody who doesn't really look at Nigeria and a lot of details will ask you is that, so why do you have a currency crisis?
Exactly.
Right.
But we've known, so this CBN has been known not to basically get on with business, right? They've done bigger things and they didn't, when they cleared the airline backlog, there was barely any noise. You wouldn't have even known.
So what grounds do you have with this one?
No, I'm saying that
It's very celebratory, but I don't
what's
know
wrong
if
with that anyway? Even if it is, like, what's wrong with
This
it?
is an important
That's what I'm
data
trying to
point that
understand.
I feel like as an investor, I
Yeah. I mean, I have to agree with them on this one.
Let me go to you. So, I mean, knowing this now, are you more?
No,
does it make you
no,
more
no.
confident in the Naira?
my point, exactly.
That's where this is.
Yeah.
See, this is very important because we are in a market and an economy where people are very, very jittery when it comes to the Naira, especially making whether it's medium to long-term decisions. So a lot of people make a lot of short-term decisions in this economy because of the exchange rate, because of the instability and the the historical link between the exchange rate and constant weakness. So now that we're seeing some of all these transparent numbers,
it's good.
Out,
no, it's good.
So
it's good.
does that anyway evoke any kind of
No,
confidence?
I know.
Forget about the celebratory nature.
Before you answer,
I don't see it as a celebration.
This is not a
transparency.
celebration, right?
It's transparency.
I think it's improvement in transparency.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
it's good.
that has to be a positive. I would like to hear Arnold's take as to why he's negative on the Naira. Or why he's not as positive.
So the thing is,
right?
I agree with everything Samson said. 100%. The journey that we've been through, and everything has been cleaned up and where it is now. But for me, it's just
Just pretend like 2G is not here.
So for me, it's just on a macro scale when I look at the world.
Macro.
Yeah, global macro. So for me, it's a global macro picture where, even when you look at where we are, where the global macro where we are, we're in an environment where we have a weak dollar. Dollar's down over 3 to 4% this year to date.
Yeah, but everyone expected the dollar to be strong.
Yeah, everyone did. But I'm just saying, globally, we're in a weak dollar environment, and Naira is still where it is. Naira hasn't strengthened. So I guess to your point, where maybe the central bank has been trying to keep the Naira weak because you need a weak Naira. I still believe, and when I look at currencies historically, and maybe there isn't enough time to get into everything, I still believe that the Naira is weak and just gets weaker.
So on a structural balance of payment basis, the trend for the Naira is weak.
Yes.
Right? But you then need to look at short-term cyclical factors, right? I've never made the argument, that unless you address our structural balance of payment problem, and this is the point I'm talking about with regards to non-oil exports, which is what I was saying that if you gave me one KPI in terms of exchange rate stability, what would it be? I would say the number of containers that leave Nigeria with goods, right? That would be a huge boost. Yeah. And if we can grow that number, right, I think that would address to an extent our structural.
Absolutely.
I agree. The short term is we have overshot equilibrium. If you look at where equilibrium levels for the Naira is, if you look at inflation differential, I don't know what your starting point is and the adjustment that we've made on the exchange rate. I think equilibrium value for the Naira, we have overshot equilibrium. So typically when you've overshot equilibrium, right, it takes a while for imbalances to rebuild, right? So Arnold's view is that those imbalances will rear its head. It will, but I just think that we probably have bought
time. We're buying time.
I think we've bought between 3 to 5 years.
Hey.
No,
I think we've bought between 3 to 5 years
of what?
We've bought
goodwill.
Of goodwill.
So are you saying that you don't expect foreign investors to come in now?
No. Because I'm just saying we bought short-term goods. We bought short-term time, but I don't think it's up to it's up more than a year.
No. So
I don't think it's more than a year. So this is where we disagree.
So this is where I'm saying.
Okay.
So in the very short term, we need FPI flows, right? Remittance have been growing, and hopefully they continue to trend in the right direction.
Yeah.
If what we are talking about with regards to oil volume kicks in,
So now, so the idea you're saying is we, and I use this term, we kick the can down the road until this side fixes.
Yes.
So the question is, when is this going to fix? And that's what we don't know.
So if you're talking about oil, so it's two things that can happen with regards to oil, right? Number one, right? Actually three. Number one, right? Your oil volume can increase, right? Obviously, you need investments for oil volume to increase, and based on this NNPC target, we're talking about 2.7. Well, can I finish?
Go. No,
can I
just
right? So you need volumes to increase, right? Number one. Number two, you need price to increase. So if price is globally determined, we can debate whether price is going to go up or not. And then number three,
we know we're in a soft
there's also the pass-through effect, right? Of the oil revenues. Because think about it, in the past, Nigeria collected oil revenues. It was either lost through the evacuation integrity stuff, right? Or the revenues that we got was frittered away through the subsidy system. Right? So
that's gone.
just by eliminating the subsidy, right, you would, I haven't done the analysis, but basically by eliminating the subsidy, there is the way the economy is going to operate.
There's
right?
a better chance.
It's going to operate like you've probably gotten an additional $15 to $20 in oil price. You get because of the take rates that you are now getting from that oil.
Yeah.
So your effective oil price realized that you are getting on your barrels, or the effective volume is higher just because you've eliminated it. So those are the three factors I think over the medium term. And when I say medium term, I say 12 to 36 months is going to kick in, right? If during that period we don't fix these issues, oil volumes doesn't come up, your price doesn't go up, or subsidy comes back,
even if fiscal
then
is
we
not
can
fixed.
be back to the same
Note
position.
that I held the three fingers up. Now, these things he has said, three of
If you
them
look at
have
where they are
neither
today-
happened, nor do we have clear definitions of three of them happening.
but
My thought is simply that we still have a bit to be seen to know that these three will happen. Now,
And
if
the
all
only thing
three
that's in our
happen,
control.
if all three happen, Nigeria is on the fantastic threshold to grow.
And speaking globally,
I
and
think
speaking economically.
on the balance of probability, I think it's likely that at least 2 of 3 of
No,
these
but
things will happen.
if speaking macroeconomic speaking, we're already in a softer oil environment. Oil gets weaker, right? If you look at the factors that affects oil price right now, uncertainty, that one is a given, right? Uncertainty. Let's go into Trump. Let's go into tariffs. Let's go into how that slows global demand. How that slows global consumer. If you look at how the global demand slows and how that affects oil price, we're already looking at a softer oil price through the year. Oil gets weaker.
Oil
gets weaker. Oil
I
gets
don't know
weaker
why you're
just
so
because of-
confident. I'll come. I think we'll come to tariffs, right? Because I think I said one of the most biggest
We're 1
risk.
hour in already.
Yeah, my biggest risk, right, with regards to my Nigerian view, has really always been around Trump. And I said that. I think on a domestic factor basis, I have a reasonably high degree of confidence around Naira stability and the impact it will have on Naira assets, right? Equities, fixed income. Where I have been unsure of is the impact of Trump's policy on oil price and on.
But you can see it play out now.
But increasingly, right? Because I've been asking myself, because I usually try as much as possible not to be intellectually arrogant, right? And take the view that these Trump people don't know what they are doing. It's very easy to say that, but I've been trying to really understand, okay, what are these guys trying to achieve, right? And increasingly, it looks to me that Trump is trying to achieve weak dollar.
Yeah.
Right? Although the argument is that how does tariff allow you to achieve weak dollar? So when you really think about it,
because anyway, go on.
in order to achieve weak dollar, right, you can do one of two things, right? You can either collapse your economy, right, which is you nuke the economy, you basically do the things that people think Trump is doing, or you can basically do the inverse of what America has been doing in the last 20 years. And by that, what do I mean? So the reason America has a relatively strong dollar, right, is that it has a very large capital account surplus. America has basically rented its consumer economy to the rest of the world. And that consumer economy the rest of the world has recycled capital back into America, right? A good way to potentially weaken the dollar
Is to stop the market coming
is
in.
to get the rest of the world to spend, right? And in my head, Germany, and I repeat, Germany, the fiscal hawks of the world, have just told you, right, that they're going to be spending because they had the debt break. Debt break was like 35 basis points of deficit that they were not allowed to go over, both on the infrastructure side and on the defense-related spending. It is plausible that over the next decade, Germany is going to be spending between 2 to 3% of GDP in deficits, right? That is the spending that needs to happen. I'm suspecting Canada will probably need to spend. Canada currently spending around 1.4% of EU needs to spend. So what is now happening, right, is the fiscal impulse is shifting out of the US into the rest of the world. When that happens, what would happen is that the dollar might not necessarily weaken, but the currencies of the rest of the world will strengthen relative to the dollar, and Trump can achieve the same effect.
So now let's look at oil.
So
But now going to oil.
Speculating, of course.
So now going to oil and what it means when US is pumping more oil. In my view of tariffs,
US cannot pump more oil.
My view of tariffs slowing. They can't. Why can't they?
So the price
Because
point,
US is coming online. Is it Brazil, Mexico? They're all coming online.
so
US
the
cannot
price
pump
point,
more
the
oil.
price point also, I mean, it's just, there's a reason why their oil wells went offline to begin with.
Cost
Cost is an issue. And if this trade war continues to go, the price point becomes prohibitive for them to pump oil. And there's no real reason why the US needs to pump as much more oil.
So Tunji, I say the point I am, it is easier for the US to take barrels off the market than for them to add barrels to the market.
But that's not what they're indicating, though.
But
So what's the indication?
Trump is saying,
what's the
Trump
indication?
and Barnett is saying, they want to increase it by 3 million barrels.
Exactly.
Remember, Biden and Obama grew significantly oil production in the US. I think the US is now around 30 million barrels 30 million barrels a day of production. That's a significant growth. I think they are now the largest oil producer in the world, right? The decision-making apparatus with regards to the choice of bringing oil on stream is held in private hands. It is not a centralized system like the Saudis where they can choose to switch on, switch off. These are economic actors that are making rational economic decisions.
Yes, they don't.
So Trump, they're not going to bring production on because Trump wants them to. It will only bring production on because it makes commercial sense. And a lot of these production are high cost producers.
Yes.
So where's the cost? What price?
Shale oils. I mean, it depends on the field, but Permian Basin, you are talking about $45-50 break even, right?
Isn't that what killed shale oil at the
That's
end
what killed shale,
Yeah.
So
very rational.
So these guys are rational. So the moment oil price goes down, the way the US will ratchet down volume, you will be shocked.
Okay.
I think we've seen this happen
But the US
already
can
before.
easily take production out too.
Exactly.
Because number one,
they
see
can.
what Trump is saying with Iran. Because it sounds like the Israelis are already pushing the Trump administration to tackle Iran and not even just tackle the Yemenis, but basically tackle Iran directly. If Trump takes out Iranian barrels out of the market, oil price spikes. You're talking about
Exactly.
So and that one is easier to do than bringing production on.
You can take
guys,
offense.
we gotta move.
And the way they look at you, I'm
Time
like, how dare you look at me?
is
We bomb you.
So that's why like I'm not a buyer unless the US goes into a recession. It's not my base case that the US goes into a recession. I think the US weakens. And if you look at it, the soft indicators are already telling you that the US is going to weaken. The hard data is still strong, but I think that there's a lot of forward buying that is happening in anticipation of tariff. So I think when you look forward, I think the US economy will will soft pedal, but the economy is still relatively strong. So what my base case is with regards to the global outlook is a relative shift in growth dynamics away from the US towards the rest of the world. And in that environment, dollar weakens. And if dollar weakens, I can't understand why you think Naira will be under pressure.
I think
dollar's been weak and Naira's still under pressure. Dollar's down 4% already this year, so I don't understand.
Yeah,
so,
but Naira is okay. Naira is not. Remember,
I mean, it's not close to the value that we think it should, but at least it's okay.
It's a new market.
It's priced on the value.
It's like this market system that we have, and it's like almost like a baby, that we are trying to midwife into a proper market.
So I think that's my own problem, right? I have not seen enough yet to give me that confidence. You know, the truth about it is that we're still at that market that is very highly susceptible to shocks. Any small cold in the global market and we catch a cold, right? If we have some buffers that can be able to sustain us, then they
are building the buffers now. Before it was 3 billion, we're now 23
until
billion.
the buffers are built.
We are 40, oil production starts
do
to
not
come, oil
forget.
price goes up. There are lots of... So the problem is that I look at things from a perspective of balance of probability, right? Because it's very difficult to have one linear base case on what you think is going to happen. When I look at the balance of probabilities, there are more probabilistic outcome of a positive Naira than the risk of a negative.
Okay,
Naira.
looking at the factors you've looked at, then what's the probability of oil production increasing
in Nigeria?
The probability of that using historical performance.
So I think oil production. I'll tell you the simple reason why I think oil production will increase is that a lot of assets has changed hands, and a lot of those assets have been bought with leverage, and those assets
they need to produce.
That doesn't mean much. That doesn't mean much.
You're looking about 500,000 barrels per day.
I know Seplat, for example, is already
that it needs to produce doesn't mean it will produce.
I'm being modest.
Yeah. I think so.
Wait now, guys. That it needs to produce doesn't mean it will produce.
It will produce.
That it needs to produce is a factor that is concerning the
we will hit 2 million.
Anyway, guys,
that's a factor that is. What's the term you said?
Evacuation, integrity,
we gotta segue into we still have stories. We gotta segue into Trump. Trump's Liberation Day is here, and I mean, we've not heard much about it in the news all day. I guess maybe we'll hear much later. But already the markets have spoken, and S&P tanked Q1. I mean, as expected, a lot of people are now afraid that there might be a recession in the US anytime soon. And I guess to Samson's point, perhaps maybe this is all playing into Trump's grand plan of seeing a weaker dollar. We've also seen, surprisingly, China, Japan, and South Korea come together to form some kind of trading bloc alliance, which is quite shocking as well.
Shocking.
Very shocking. It was shocking.
No.
South Korea and Japan are satellite states of the US.
I'm telling you.
I mean, it is groundbreaking.
And then aligning with China. It is groundbreaking. It is groundbreaking. And of course, you also see EU rallying as well to form some kind of bloc or response against the expectant Trump tariff, and of course Canada as well. Guys, quickly, we don't have too much time. Your views on this?
Arnold, you want to go first?
My views on this? What else can I say?
It's D-Day. It's Liberation Day.
So the funny thing is, right? If you look at tariffs in the US historically, the US is actually one of the lowest tariff countries ever, right? If you actually look at it, so 1929, when you had the Wall Street crash, when the US economy went crazy, they decided to increase tariffs, right, to become protectionist. And then 1938 or so, tariffs went low, and tariffs have been quite low in the US for a while, and even tariffs going up. When I look at where tariffs are now, or where Trump is trying to get tariffs to, and then look at where it's been historically, I actually think Trump probably has a point about the US making bad deals through this period. Yeah, if you look at it, if you think about it, the US has been very cheap. So I'm actually seeing the retaliation of these countries. I'm starting to feel like they might be overreacting a little bit. They're just used to getting better deals than they've had historically,
but I think
and they're reacting
when the dollar is the reserve currency of the world. Like that's where I really can't get I can't wrap my head around. Like
the payout.
What do you want? Yeah,
no.
So you don't face the same currency risk that everybody faces.
Yeah,
you're the reserve currency of the world. I think
you export and import in the same currency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think even a third, a quarter or so of global capital flows.
So, but the US
since COVID went to the US. So what exactly? And you're paying the price for success because competitively, you can't attract cheap jobs. So you can't really attract cheap manufacturing.
So
what exactly?
So it's simple. America as a collective has gotten richer. America as an individual, and when I'm talking individual, I'm talking about the average person, has gotten poorer. Okay. Generally because America has outsourced its population to the rest of the world. In the 60s, the 70s, Americans were proud to work, right? They had jobs in factories, they had jobs in manufacturing, they had jobs with the car manufacturing industry. They were jobs. Now, it wasn't really much about jobs that made you a billionaire, millionaire. It was just jobs that took you home, as they say,
Give
right?
you that American dream.
Exactly, the American dream. Unfortunately, because of this whole global currency, right? It's now ensured that factories move to China, move to Hong Kong, move to...
It's not because of the global currency. It's because of the greed of American elites.
You think so?
Yes, because basically what they wanted, right? Because there was this talk, right, in the heyday of the neoliberal globalization, which was they wanted low inflation, right? So basically America basically prioritized profit margins, right? And prioritized low inflation. And the trade-off of getting low inflation and high profit margin was the industrialization of your Rust Belt, right? That was a choice. That was more driven by China introduction into the WTO, right? And that happened towards the back end of the 1990s. And then China built all this productive capacity that American firms outsourced
to China.
Not just
for
China,
profits.
not just China.
So America
India,
made a choice.
Singapore.
They prioritized profit margins and low inflation over an industrial base. So that was the choice that America made.
When we're talking about
are you going to eat your cake and have it then?
No. When we're talking about bad deals that Trump is speaking about, those were the bad deals. Because
were they really bad deals?
At the time,
in hindsight is 2020, but were they really bad deals?
Of course. But if you look at it now, America cannot continue on that trajectory because it may still make the country powerful, quote unquote, right? But you are killing the middle class in America.
Yeah, so there's an argument to be and this is I don't know if Trump will succeed in bringing manufacturing back into. I don't think he will,
right? But
I really feel like that horse have bolted. But I can understand Americans' feeling of vulnerability.
Yes,
right. So for example, like I was like, if like for whatever reason, America and China goes to war tomorrow. Right?
Wow. It's all over.
I think excluding the use of weapons of mass destruction,
Yeah.
I think the Chinese wins hands down.
Hands down.
Right.
Clothes,
Right.
electronics.
Because I think
Yeah, I mean, I agree with
they
that.
have such, they will just wait for the US to run out of shells.
I'm telling you.
and that's what so I think and I think COVID was probably a wake-up call for American elites to understand how vulnerable they are to this idea that you can have a global supply chain that is located in another country that could possibly be hostile to you, right? That's very scary, right? The question I'm making is, I think those are policy choices that America themselves made.
Absolutely. And what Trump is saying really is these were bad deals that were made before, and we need to fix it now. There's no
Tariffs, I
gainsaying.
don't know if tariffs, this is my challenge with tariffs, is firstly, Liberation Day, I think is going to be a big nothing done. Let's see what happens, right? He will come up with some performative, but think about it, his tariff has been dancing up and down.
Yeah.
What he's done with this tariff, he hasn't gotten significantly more revenues from tariff implementation.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think the impact on the fiscal situation is not going to be good, right? It's significantly hampered business decision making. If you have capex that you need to do, you're going to slow down, you're going to slow down. So the investment portion of GDP is going to come under pressure as a result of this tariff.
So what does South Korea, Japan, and China? What does that look like? Whatever
It's just
so that's why
basically
hard
it's basically a trading block. So the general
what does
idea.
it look like? What do the tariffs look like? Do we know?
25% from the US.
Yeah,
I mean, 25%.
The block. No.
No, but they haven't implemented the tariff against the others, right?
As in, is it
I guess the
tariff
block.
with the
The block
US?
Yeah, what does it look like?
The block
Yeah,
just
yeah.
came through now.
So they're just,
Yeah,
I
so
think the
until
idea is
we
that they want to coordinate
together
a
to do
response.
something.
No,
Response,
yes,
yeah.
and I'm not sure if it's just a response. It's also, again, let's not forget, America is their largest market. When they're thinking of production, they think of Africa, yes, but
They
America.
don't think of Africa.
You don't think of Think of Africa from extracting.
My heart.
They don't think of Africa.
My heart.
No.
But any country across the world, and yet you have
For inputs, they do.
any country across the world.
Extractive. They can come collect the
Input costs.
but you're not a market.
Wow. So any country across the world that you're thinking heavily in terms of manufacturing, America has to be one of the markets that you have access
Obviously.
to.
Yeah, of course.
Now, that is critical for any country. Now, I think what they are trying to do is they do realize that there is a problem with selling to America. I think one of the first things they're trying to ask themselves between
they
the
sell to
three,
each other?
exactly. Can I sell to you? Is there something that you have that I don't have? You know, is there something I have that you do not? Because the problem
But don't
also,
they all accept? Don't
No.
they all have
The same things to sell?
Not even that.
No, they don't have the same thing.
Don't they have access to their markets?
Well, no. This time is now state of emergency. so you really have to come and have those conversations because
To get those people to spend is
China's
cultural.
domestic consumption is weak and has been
then,
weak for
apart from
almost
that,
over a decade.
Is it their domestic savings is also high?
It's
That's
very
also a
high.
problem.
The Chinese save like crazy.
Yeah, the big savers.
They are big savers. They don't spend that much. So don't have, as big as their manufacturing industry is, it's not meant for
So
China.
let me try and like this.
Maybe they could make us rich so that we
No,
can buy.
So I've always had this. I've always had this crazy feeling. And
Borrow
I'm
us money.
That's
I'm
my
thinking,
pitch to them.
is this perhaps the US indirectly admitting that there's we've always talked about that new world order, but there is a global shift in consumption that they don't want to admit. And that is, look, maybe we're not just the consumption capital of the world anymore. Perhaps that consumption has now moved to other countries. It's no longer like, we're no longer in a monopolar or in a monolithic world where it's just the US that is the, drives consumption globally. You're now seeing consumption essentially decentralized. You're seeing,
I don't think so.
Hold on. You're seeing GDP per capita increase in some countries in the Middle East. You're seeing GDP per capita increase in Europe, particularly Western Europe. You're seeing that happening in Southeast Asia. So US perhaps cannot continue to fool itself as the bastion of high consumption because of their GDP per capita. And perhaps they're looking down the line and saying, you know what, if we don't stimulate domestic production here,
we will die.
we're just going to get outcompete at some point, and we just feel, and at some point you start to get really poor. Because then you now have a lot of countries that are actually growing organically.
But seeing it from a consumer perspective, I'm trying to understand that. So you're saying that the US is realizing that the world is bigger than them in terms of consumerism?
No. I'm saying you're already seeing a rise of consumers. Globally, right? You're seeing Japanese, you're seeing the Chinese spend, you're seeing Europeans as well spending. So you're seeing Middle East countries saying they want to invest $50-100 billion in economies globally. So you're seeing the rise of other countries already. Yeah. And you're saying, look, 10, 15, 20 years from now, economically, in terms of economic power, where would the US be if you don't stimulate domestic production? If you don't find a way of growing domestic
I don't think...
Sorry, let me quickly say this. One of the reasons why domestic consumption in America is huge is that for every dollar spent in Nigeria, an American can spend 50.
Now, but
based on the credit system in the US. You can buy
which can go belly up.
No, the problem is that
immediately the dollar is no longer the reserve currency.
But the challenge, I think goes onto a point.
Yeah,
right? Because leverage only works to the extent that incomes continue to rise.
Exactly.
Yes, right. So
but it has not gotten belly up yet.
Yeah, it hasn't. But the question is, income in America outside of the high-end corporate market has been stagnant.
There's no much growth.
Yes.
There's no much growth.
What has been challenging and what has been driving consumption is
credit.
Right?
Exactly.
So the point is, if you don't boost productivity,
at some point, it's going to give way.
You're going to blow.
That's the point.
Yeah.
So I kind of think there's a huge.
I was about to City of Lagos, but audience, this is go back 4-5 editions of Drinks and Mics.
There you go.
I was alone on this table. I was alone on this table saying these things. Now everybody has come full circle.
I can't claim to fully understand what Trump is doing, by the way.
It's hard.
It's all iterations and thinking about, I listen to what Bassam says, I listen to what Trump says, and just trying to figure out, okay, what are they trying to solve for? I think it's very delicate, right? Because there's one thing, because from the sound of things, Trump wants to get manufacturing back, but he wants to preserve dollar hegemony. Those things fight each other.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, he's treading a very thin line.
Yeah.
In an economy that is, I'm always of the view that the US economies are usually complex. Even Nigerian economy is complex. The US even more so.
Complex, yeah.
So, this levers that you are pulling, you can pull it in the wrong direction and you would precipitate an outcome that you didn't plan for.
Exactly.
Because, for example, there's another thing they talk about, which is they want to control long bond yields. Right? And long bond yields, what are long bond yields? The US 10-year yield is basically what the terminal rate for the Fed is going to be on average over the last 10 years plus a risk premium, so the 10 premium, right?
But you want to cap it.
Those are usually market-driven, market-determined. And that is, in order for you to be able to control your long bond yield, you basically need to be able to control inflation expectation, right? It's not there's no magic that you can perform, right? You need to control inflation expectation. And to control inflation expectation, obviously, it requires significant economic supply side factors, etc. But they are talking about, they are going to release SLRs to allow banks to be able to buy treasury bills. They are going to. So my point is, can you really control these things to the extent that the Trump and his economic team think that they can?
That's a big
I was about to say that my people say that.
My bet is a no, Bob. You can speak it in Yoruba so that the Yoruba people will enjoy it. And then before you translate it into English.
My people say that we have not seen this happen before. We're just trying to scare the person that has a predicament.
You're trying to figure that out. While you're figuring it out, we got to move on. All right. So, at least one thing that we've seen before is earnings. We're in the earnings season, and the Fugas dropped some of their numbers. and those that are knocking on the doors on the
The
Fugas.
Fugas. There's only
Some of
three
them
now.
have dropped their numbers.
The F and the A.
The Ugas.
What's already
They haven't seen the results.
We're waiting for the FAR. You guys are wondering who they are.
Only 10 Naira dividends, 20 Naira dividends.
FAR, of course, is first holding that access yet to drop at least at the time we tape this. But we've seen GT, we've seen Zenith, we've seen UBA. We've also seen those knocking at the door as well of the Fugas.
I want to shake the table on this
We've
quickly.
seen Stambik. So
I want to shake the
I'm
table.
going to
I want to
just put the
shake the
guys on
table
the
on
spot
this.
here.
Hot take.
I want to shake the table on this. I want to shake the table. I want to go straight in.
At least you're going to hear Arnold speak like this is his area, man. This is
No. I just want to say something.
This is tough. Go ahead.
I want to shake the table. I'm about to cause a ruckus.
Go ahead.
So I think for me, right, I was looking at the numbers. What is it? Zenith, 4 Naira dividend, 8.2%. So Zenith and GTCO have always been a stock, and we spoke about this earlier, where it talks about pairs trading, right? So generally, pairs trading is, you take two assets that look the same. You buy the cheap and you sell the expensive, right? So Zenith and GT, let's imagine that they are the same asset, or two different securities that look the same. They're tier one banks, roughly the same market cap, do the same thing in the same country.
Better explanation is Coke and Pepsi.
Yeah, so you see,
So they should trade close to the same price. Right?
so they should trade close to the same price. So historically, you've always had a price difference of
GT and
Wait now. Let me finish. So historically, maybe a price difference of maybe 10, 12 Naira, where GT 5 Naira. Okay. To make some, don't worry, I'm still gonna shake the table. Where GT was slightly more expensive, but regardless, the idea is if the spread, if it gets wide, you buy. If it gets wide because you buy Zenith. Because you think Zenith, you think the spread closes.
Yeah.
So what we've seen now, we've seen the spread go from 5 Naira to 23 Naira, right? So Zenith is 47 or so Naira, GT is 69 Naira. So it's like, oh wow, the spread is wide. But so naturally you would buy Zenith, sell GT, or just buy Zenith because the spread is too wide. But I'm about to shake the table with this now. But if you look at it with dividend yields, right? Zenith dividend yield was what, 8.2%, and GT was 10.9%. It tells you that for Zenith to get a 10% dividend yield, it needs to be about 10 Naira cheaper than it is right now.
You know why I disagree with your point? Because this is also my area.
Okay, go on.
At least as a fundamental investor, Arnold. And that's why I hate looking at share price.
Oh no, this is just share price speaking.
Market cap wise.
This is not. I'm not going to.
Wise,
okay.
They're closely the same, or perhaps Zenith
should they
probably
be the
even
same?
slightly higher.
Yeah. So
Market cap wise, not share price. Market cap. Okay. Should it be the same? I think Zenith probably should maybe be slightly.
if you say okay, go on. No, go on. I'm listening.
You're onto
So
something.
So in terms of size, perhaps you might want to say Zenith should be slightly higher, but in terms of returns, in terms of earnings per share, which is my favorite number all the time, because earnings per share at the end of the day averages out everything.
Yeah.
I think they should be around the same.
So I would say something, right?
They should be around the same in terms of market cap, not share price. Because
So
share
market-
price,
so you're saying
share
market
price
cap-
depends on the number of shares.
Let's give credit to where credit is due, right?
Yeah.
And I have some reservations on Q4 numbers for GT, and I can talk to that.
Okay.
But we need to understand that GT is the most profitable bank in Nigeria,
Correct.
and it has basically
most profitable by what?
by return on equity,
correct.
EPS, right?
Yeah.
But to make things even more crazy and to get a sense of how efficient GT Bank is, it has an asset base that is 50% of the value of its closest competitor, which is Zenith.
Yeah.
So basically, it's earning on every Naira of assets that GT Bank has, it's earning twice as much.
It's sweating its asset more.
As Zenith Bank,
Yeah.
right? So I think the numbers that GT Bank had was fantastic. That's one. Number two, the big thing that people were saying in 2023 with regards to GT is a lot of the earnings that came through was driven by FX revaluation gain because of his balance sheet structure. Because his balance sheet is a dollar balance sheet. Around 40-something% of his assets is dollars. So it's a dollar balance sheet. So when the Naira weakened, they revalue and it book FX revaluation gain. And I think FX revaluation gain was around 60-something% of the total earnings that GT Bank made in 2023. So the question was that earnings in 2024 was going to collapse. Guess what? Earnings exploded, and the cash portion of earnings, right? So based on the estimate that my team have done, of the 1-point-something trillion in PAT that GT booked, around 900 billion of that is actually cash, right? And that is why it's been able to support the high dividends payments that it's made. It's only paid 22% of its earnings as dividend and about 25% of its cash earnings as dividend. When you look at Zenith Bank, however, the numbers are very strong on a headline nominal PAT basis, right? But when you do the cash analysis, right, based on our estimates, right, they are barely making, because there's a big trading gain that is largely unrealized that we've stripped out of the numbers, right? They're barely making enough cash earnings to cover their operating costs, right? That can unwind in the future because some of the right, but when you look at cash analysis alone, you can understand to an extent why Zenith opted to be conservative on cash distribution, right? So that's one. So that's one point on the numbers. The second point is when you look at asset quality, the Zenith asset quality, I don't know what has happened to the bank in the last, they've always been quite conservative, but the size of the loan book as a proportion of total assets, I think Zenith has around 40% plus, GTCO has 18%. GTCO is not a bank, it's a bond hedge fund, right? with a payment engine next to it, right? Because the quality, like in their earnings presentation, which they are doing tomorrow, is like they have 2% stage 2 loans. That's madness. Zenith has 31% of their loan book as stage 2 loans. So they've been booking a lot of provisions. So I have question marks around that asset quality.
Right?
Around whose asset quality?
Zenith.
Okay. I have question marks around asset quality. So that's one. So the second part is the Q4 numbers for GT. I'm still scratching my heads on it, right? Because there was huge growth in impairment. I think they took about 78 billion in impairment. Huge increase in tax provisions, right? So the tax was about 100 and something billion, right? And then the net interest income declined, right? And they lost deposits by a significant number. I think obviously they had technology disruption. So question marks is going to be. And for me, GT's bank's competitive advantage, what makes that bank bulletproof is the size of its low-cost retail deposit base. Right? That's what makes it bulletproof. That is what makes GT. So the question I'm going to have for Segun when he has his earnings call is trying to understand of those deposits that has gone out, like what is the chances that they're going to get them back? Because banks are balance sheet driven businesses and they've done excellently well sweating their balance sheet, but they cannot afford to lose deposits. So I'm hoping that they don't. So to summarize, the numbers were stellar. I think there's a lot of window dressing that is happening because of how strong 2024 has been. Yes, I think so. Because like how do you explain? So how do you explain? I know the macro has been bad, but taking a 78 billion impairment in one quarter alone for GT Bank, it's
a little disturbing for you.
It's quite aggressive. It's very, very aggressive. It's quite aggressive. So I'm trying to understand what has happened there, right? And they've been very aggressive in taking impairments for sure. And obviously impairment is the way the auditors will let you, because like I had a chat with Zenith a while back trying to understand why they've been aggressively positioning for a few quarters now, right? So what's going on here? Like, is things really this bad? And they're like, well, the ECL models that they use allow them to take into macroeconomic factors. So you can just say, exchange rate is volatile, inflation is too high, I'm going to take another 50 billion in provisions and the auditors will pass it, right? So
to put you on the spot, so if you were to do a pair trade, which I spoke about in my view, right? So when I'm looking at pricing a share price, I'm looking at pricing it based on dividend yield and saying that if I'm looking at the two assets that are the same, two share prices that are two stocks that are the same, and where you're in a position of buy one, sell one, and using dividends, it feels like Zenith should be cheaper.
No, so Zenith should be cheaper, but the question is by how much. So the thing is, I own both banks. I'm not going to buy one and sell the other. I like both.
Yeah.
Right? I think obviously Zenith was probably blindsided by the scale of dividend that GT was going to
it affected the price.
So my sense is that they will try and make that up over the coming dividend periods.
Okay.
The second point that I also wanted to make is,
so where you think H1 June, leading up to June, dividend starts to look better and then market expects it?
Yeah.
So,
well, this market tend to not expect. They wait for it to happen.
Before
the market reacts. But the point that I'm trying to make is, I think it's because GT Bank, like if they can clarify on this deposit issue, like it looks like a monster, right?
What's the deposit issue with GT Bank again?
They had outflows. I don't want to say the numbers here, but they had
between what quarters?
Between Q3 and Q4.
Okay.
They had for given the total size of the deposit base, the number of outflows they had in a quarter was quite significant. Right. And obviously they had the massive core banking system upgrade that they did.
Just for the records, I think Q3 was 11.2 trillion total deposits. And then Q4 was 10.4 trillion. So that's almost $1 trillion.
So you can see why that is very disturbing. That's basically almost 8% of your balance sheet in one quarter.
Interesting.
And it's a balance sheet driven business. However, I suspect that a lot of it was just disgruntled customers during core banking system migration, and cost of funding might need to go up, but they will be able to attract some of those customers back when the system is a bit more stable.
It'll be interesting to see what their Q1 is like this year, though. See if some of those customers came back in Q1.
It will be so Q1, I'm going to be watching Q1 like a hawk. I still like GT. It's best in class. Think about GT Bank.
How are they being able to, apologies for cutting in, I mean, still make your point later, but how are they able to create so much value with so little balance sheets? And is that sustainable over the next 5-10 years?
When your cost of capital is 3.1% and your interest rate environment,
what are they doing that with the others?
27%. You're good.
It's 25%.
It's the same market for every other bank. So what's different?
So I mean, I don't want to say certain things in this forum, but I in my opinion, and I might be wrong, GT Bank gives you a sense of what the underlying profitability of Nigerian banking system is.
Which is?
Potentially? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Or probably the sort of profits that
they're not
declaring. Is that what you're going to?
This is the profit pool that's adjusted for the cost of your liability that I think Nigerian banks should be making. In my opinion, Nigerian banks are one of the most profitable banks in EM, across EM. Right, in terms of across emerging markets,
Well, they are. They are.
So let's look
one of the cheapest.
So let's look at the A of the Fugas. With, I mean,
balance sheet. You are pushing me to conversations.
Balance sheet. I'm not the A of the Fugas now. Total deposit hitting almost 2 trillion.
I plead fifth.
I know that you pleaded.
I'm also with Samson on this one.
Why you
I'm also with Samson on this one.
I plead
Axis Bank, 31 trillion, 32 trillion or thereabouts.
I'll just say something.
Why are they not sweating
the balance sheet
assets?
size of assets? I struggle to
They should be doing more than that. They should be doing more than.
So it looks like the business has grown faster than its ability to fund itself. That's what it feels like, because it's almost
the business grows faster than its ability to what?
To fund itself. Because think about it, it has a liability cost that is similar to Fidelity, but it has a balance sheet that is similar to Zenith Bank.
Could you repeat that? It has a liability cost that is similar to Fidelity. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh
my God.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a mismatch there.
So let's talk about
I think they can address, right? Because they have the balance sheet. I hope they can address it, because there's a lot of, I mean, this is on 0.3 times. So I think there's value in access.
Yeah.
Right. But
that mismatch needs to be addressed.
There's a lot of surgeries that needs to be performed.
Surgeries.
That's as much as
I can accommodate that word. For the tier 2, which of the tier 2s do you see knocking on the doors? Fidelity did have solid numbers. Stanbic solid
there are only
numbers
two
as well.
banks, in my opinion, in Nigeria. 2.5 banks.
Isn't Stanbic too conservative for you?
No, but that's
like, can they ever knock on that tier 1 door? Can they ever? Like, really, the way Stanbic is set up? I love Stanbic, by the way, but I mean, I'm just asking.
Well, firstly, I think Stanbic is two businesses in one, right? It's the asset management
And
business.
the pension business.
So asset management and pension, I lumped them into one.
Yeah.
So that's roughly around 30-something% of earnings. But the capital that business choose is very close to zero. So the return on capital on that business is extremely high. If you strip out that business, the business that has been a challenge for them before has been their consumer, their private, their commercial banking business. That business seems to have flipped turnaround, right? And that business is now contributing around 60% plus of the earning base of the business. And Stanbic is perfectly primed for the direction of travel of this economy, right? It dominates in investment banking. It dominates in trading, right? And those are two particles that I think are going to continue to.
What do you think of Fidelity though? Fidelity looking like perhaps might be a tier 1 bank by the end of the year.
Fidelity at the moment,
The problem I have
It look like the tier 1?
It's looking expensive.
It's too expensive.
How much is it now? 21? Is it up
it's
20
expensive.
years?
There's a strategic, I think there's been a strategic
20?
potential
I think it
guy
was
that has
19.
been buying stock in the company.
Yeah.
And I've pushed it.
It's pushed it up.
to
Yeah.
position that. I like Fidelity as a company, and I kind of like they're a real bank, right? They do real banking.
Yeah,
The loan book is big. They are taking credit losses like everybody else. They're not. I mean, I love GT. I love GT.
So you're saying GT is not a real bank?
GT
an
is
investment
bank.
company.
It's a nice fixed income fund that has a really.
It's 11th play on T-bills.
That has a
11th play on treasury bills.
And then does lending on the side. which has been perfect for Nigeria.
But it's 11th play on treasury bills.
Shegun has the balance sheet to take advantage of Nigeria more than anybody else. Shegun can go to the market tomorrow, right, and fund projects, because right now he doesn't have a loan book. His loan to asset ratio is 18%. So when there's deals that to be done, and there's going to be good deals that will get done in Nigeria, all those big oil and gas, the guy will be there. Man, the rest of the people are like all their asset base are tied up in loans that they're calling on their friends saying, "I better come and pay." Shegun is just laughing.
All right, guys. This has been Drinks and Mics brought to you by Nairametrics. For the second time, we can't really go into a lot more stuff, but
Are we not going to talk about?
we will go into our usual buy, sell, or hold. I don't know what Tunji wants to talk about, but like we're almost 2 hours already. So we gotta move on here. We're talking for a bit. So buy, sell, or hold section on Drinks and Mics. So I'm going to give Tunji the honor to start with buy, sell, or hold. Of course, my first buy, sell, or hold is who is winning this trade war? Trump.
Oh gosh, that's a hard one.
The West, and of course, the block that we're seeing in Eastern Europe and in Canada. So who is Tunji buying? Who is it selling? Who is it holding? Are you buying US? Are you selling US? Or are you buying Canada or holding Canada or selling Canada? So for each of these blocks, who are you buying? Who are you selling? Who are you holding?
So I'm holding the US, buying the Asian tigers. Definitely selling Europe and Canada.
Something about the way this guy just
Yeah, but Tunji has a crystal ball somewhere. It says with so much confidence.
So the Asian tigers, one of the things the Asian tigers have over the rest of the world is the deep manufacturing base, and they've been able to create that manufacturing base with very cheap. So it's not just the cheap labor. People attribute a lot of it to cheap labor, but they've been able to find efficiency in production. So the unit cost of producing is not just in the human capital, but it's in the processing of the production. So yeah.
I know.
So what's your question? Buy, sell US, buy, sell.
Yeah, just
Europe.
So not this
Europe,
versus this, it's just
so
this.
Europe, Canada, Asia, Southeast Asia,
So who wins?
US. Who you buying? Who you selling? Who are you buying? Are you going to buy US or are you going to sell US? So each of those areas, buy, sell, or hold.
So I'm short US, right? Just in terms of
So you're
So
selling
buy,
US.
sell,
how am I short
hold.
US? Sorry, so I'm selling US. How am I selling? Because for me, I think that the way this ends is treasury bills yields rise. Treasury bills get cheaper, right? So I'm short US.
So you're selling US. So
I'm selling US.
basically,
sorry.
US is not winning this war.
So I'm thinking of it as a macro play in terms of sovereign bond, right? So I'm selling US sovereign bonds.
Okay.
So I'm short US.
Canada?
Canada. Hold. So I don't know how that plays out.
Europe?
Europe, I'm buying Europe. I think Europe come in with a strong. You talked about a fundraiser. Germany wins. I think Germany is going to come on top somewhere. Asia's going to be fine. So the Asian bloc, South Korea, Japan.
You're buying them.
I'm buying China. I'm buying Asia.
Samson?
Hold on the US. Probably sell on Canada.
Sri Lanka, even with Kanye in there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Marconi's
The problem
in
is
there. Forgot about Marconi.
they're too close to the US to be
To be
immune
too, yeah.
to the US. It's like having a big bully of a big brother. You can't really, your degrees of freedom are
The American recession is the Canadian recession.
you can't escape the two, right? So I'm buying Europe in size, and I am hold on Asia, China, and
Why?
because I still think that China needs to work through its real estate problems, right? So domestic.
But the PBOC has come up with a package, no?
So I don't think they're going to ever give you a bounce back.
It won't work.
I think no. They will. So I think they've learned, right, that. Think about it. China basically bailed the world out of the global financial recession.
They did. Yeah,
right.
And they're paying for it now.
The cost for that is the excess capacity that they are sitting on.
They're sitting on,
Right.
Yeah.
And they are realizing that if they get to a situation where they overstimulate, nobody's going to bail them out.
Yeah.
They're just going to allow them to They're allowed them to code.
Yeah.
So I think China is going to just engineer a gradual slowdown, right? And then try to, because I've been listening to Xi Jinping talk about economics and trying to understand like his economic worldview. And there was a statement that he made that I found very interesting. He was like, the strength of an economy is not determined by the growth rate of the economy, but is determined by the dominance in technology.
He's simply telling you that 7% that you've been seeing for the last decade.
So it's like, okay, it's chosen certain things. AI wants to clearly dominate.
Yeah.
EV he wants to clearly dominate.
Yeah. Even the
So
skies.
he wants to dominate. So he's more particular about
Growth sectors.
dominance than about outright
Especially
growth.
in future sectors.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on. Buy, sell, or hold. NNPC's new management at the moment. I mean, not a lot about them, but from what you've heard, buy, sell, or hold.
I'm hold to a buy. I'm hold to a buy. Generally, because like I said when I was explaining, I'm being naive about this and expecting the best. And I'm anticipating that my thought process is the thought process that brought them into office. I'm thinking problem solvers come and fix this thing. But outside that, then it's going to be an absolute mess. But yeah, buy to a hold.
All right. For the previous one, though, I didn't say mine. So I would definitely hold US, hold Canada, buy Europe, buy Southeast Asia.
Europe is becoming a consensus.
Yeah, interesting. Everyone's saying buy Europe.
So
and Germany leading the
for NNPC new management, buy, sell, or hold for
I'm
you?
hold because I don't know them. I don't know
Hold
what it looks like. I don't know what they'll produce. I'm excited about the IPO. I like to think this is the right team for that IPO. I'm really excited about the IPO.
I'm not just cares about
I don't just care about.
Wait,
Never sing, man. It's Monday.
It's exciting.
Yeah. So my worldview with NNPC was that they should lock the place up and throw the key into the Atlantic. Right? That's basically been what I've talked about. Yes. But however, when I saw the board, right, those are not jokers.
Yeah.
Right. So I've gone from a deep sell, throw it into the Atlantic to, okay, let's give this thing a chance because there's value in that entity. Right? That value has just been mined by the wrong people.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
100%.
So I think if this team fails with NNPC, there's no redemption in that place. That's my view.
So
again, people is
Hold
hold
for
to
you.
a buy.
I want to see what happens.
All right, a lot of holds here, but I think I'll probably be the odd one out with a buy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm close to a buy, but because of how bad that institution has been, I can't open my mouth.
Godre doesn't want to accept this position of hold to a buy.
Yeah. Because I think it's pretty much hold to buy. You're on it, but you want to wait because
it's a buy for me because for the first time, I think that you're seeing a lot of technocrats on the board of NNPC, people that are proven, people that don't really have don't need NNPC to make a mark at the moment. I think that's a clear statement. I mean,
but again, we're in Nigeria. We're in Nigeria that we've seen great names go to government to die.
Come there at some point and they always turn to NJ. You know. So I mean, you never know. All right, so we go to CBN reserves. Right, CBN's Net Reserves, right? That we've just seen that you called celebratory, right? So buy, sell, or hold, positive impact on the FX, with a view to strengthening the Naira down the line.
The Naira doesn't need to strengthen stability.
Okay.
So as the event itself.
Maybe let me just twist it a bit, Tunji.
Okay.
Yeah, because that kind of makes it easy for him.
Yeah.
So I want to make it a little more difficult. Yeah. Yeah, gulp it. Buy, sell, or hold, CBN's net FX reserves, pushing FPIs to come to Nigeria this year.
Sell.
Yeah, convincing.
It's not going to do anything. See, that's how I easily went from a hold
to the mic.
Jesus Christ.
Sell. What was that? It's 23 billion we're talking about.
You think FPIs are not going to be impressed by this?
By 22.
This transparency.
So I don't think this is what gets FPIs.
This level of transparency.
I don't think this is what gets
You've
FPIs.
Never seen. I mean, you saw the numbers.
Yeah, I mean
3.9 in 2023.
Yeah, I still don't think
now
this is
we're at $23 billion. Like,
I'm even worried that FPIs might be done with us.
the
You know,
number.
if you look at the markets in March. Yeah, for a while, man. Look at the market. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I think that the market performance in March is just worrying.
And Trump scattered the market.
Yeah, and Trump is going to continue scatching the market for the rest of Q2.
No, but I think the market is getting used to Trump. I don't think we'll have the...
No, we're not yet.
What was market performance today? Have we seen that today? Is the market done?
Buy, sell, or hold.
Sorry, what's the question?
Buy, sell, or hold. Yes, buy, sell, or hold.
Yeah, I don't think this is what attracts FPIs,
sell, or
man.
hold.
That's sell.
Sell. Is the way you worded
Samson, change this.
He did this.
Is the way you worded it.
Yeah.
Is Samson.
I don't think that.
Buy. I am the buy as well. Jeez.
Wow.
Buy. I mean, like, if I'm a foreign investor sitting out somewhere.
What's your size?
And
of
I'm
foreign
looking at your
investor?
numbers and I'm saying, you know what? I just want to pity these guys and give them.
not out of pity. Okay, one of the things is not out of pity. I do think that we need to keep monetary conditions tight.
Exactly.
But you're talking about reserves. You're not looking at everything else. I don't think the reserve. The reserve attracts.
And
the reserve doesn't attract foreign investors.
You're looking at Nigeria listing on the JP Morgan bond index at some point, and you're seeing this transparency numbers, and you're seeing how well.
Wait, what took us to the JP Morgan index in the first place?
What took us out?
Took us to the JP Morgan index. It was about a $40 billion reserve at the time that was growing strongly at that particular time. I think
oil was $120. Everything was good.
Yes.
Yeah,
that was
so it's a very different story right now.
We're at $23
billion.
23 with skepticism. That was $40 billion.
And you're just at the cusp of reforms. You're just early stage reforms.
$40 billion with a lot of excitement about Africa rising.
There's something I always say to my guys in the in the office. When it comes to markets, your second derivative is more important than your first. Your rate of change is more important than the change itself. So if you have something that is 40 billion and it grows to 50 billion, something that is at 3 billion
at 3.9 billion,
3 billion is a lot more impressive.
I'm not saying I don't disagree with that.
No time. Last buy, sell, or hold. The Fugas, and without the FA, we're gonna get to FA.
Well, you can replace
some other time
first with Fidelity, in my view.
Ooh, no.
In my view,
not yet. But
as I'm saying, it's getting there. It's getting there.
For the sake of this, we're looking at the GT, Zenith, UBA, because I'm surprised you guys didn't even talk about UBA. Zenith, GT, UBA, Stanbic, Wema, and Fidelity.
When did Wema enter the Fugas?
No, Wema is not in the Fugas.
They reported. Their numbers were very strong.
So if you're not comfortable about talking about any because you don't know number, just hold. Yeah. So buy, sell, or hold each of the stocks.
So definitely buy GT. And the simple thing is that GT has been consistent in this story for quite a while. That you are beginning to wonder how they are doing it. Zenith hold to a buy. Hold to a buy.
By the way, guys, hold to buy does not exist. This is Tunji's creation. It's Tunji's creation.
Somewhere. Hold to buy.
Wema, I've been bullish about the Wema story.
Or just the Wema tech.
No, not just the Wema tech.
The tech is
So-
good.
so-
is good,
so-
but
On
it's
the right side of the government.
A lot of people will not remember when Wema was downgraded to a regional bank. You know,
Still is to a large extent.
no, but at the time when it was downgraded to a regional bank, it looked like this was the exit of a national player. But the fact that they've been able to take that on the chin, turn around a lot of their bad fortunes, and now come back strong with, you know, the fintech side of the business, which is doing well on its own. And they've now come to this business that is, you know, producing the kind of reports that they are doing. I think it's a strong buy for me on Wema.
Okay, Fidelity.
Hold,
UBA.
buy,
Stanbic.
buy.
I don't know.
Okay. GT is a buy. GT is 100, 120 Naira stock.
Zenith.
Zenith, I'm a buy Zenith, but I think Zenith gets cheaper. But
You want it to be cheaper. Is that your
yeah, I
point?
could take a 5
price do
Naira,
you
5,
buy?
5, 10 Naira. I'll buy a 40. Which is where it's about 46, 47. I'll buy a 40. GT
I'll
Go.
buy at 35.
Stanbic.
Stanbic is not one I watch that closely.
I'll buy at 35. Why don't you
Stanbic.
look at me like that?
Stanbic.
So Stanbic is not one I watch that closely. So I'll say Stanbic is a hold. Fidelity
UBA.
is a buy. I think Fidelity trades like a tier 1 by the end of the year. UBA, I'm comfortable with UBA. UBA is a hold to buy.
Holdish buy.
Hold buy.
Wema.
So for me, it's Fidelity, Wema, or Sterling. I've always seen this play in my head. Or Sterling, Wema. Fidelity buy, Wema holds. Yeah.
Sterling sell.
Wema holds. Sterling.
Even though Sterling's not on this point.
No, let's wait for
Samsung?
Sterling.
GT is a buy.
Okay.
Zenith is a buy.
Okay.
Stanbic is a buy.
Okay.
UBA is a buy.
Okay.
Wema is a hold.
Okay.
Fidelity is a hold.
Okay. All right. So
You didn't ask me about
for me,
Stanbic.
I did ask
Sorry,
you.
Sterling.
Sterling is
Sterling
not-
has it
Sterling
there.
has it there.
I'll just bring in the tier 2s out.
So for me though, I think GT a buy.
Okay. What's the
even
target price on
at
GT?
The current price 100 or 1 year.
That's 100 Naira
Yeah.
stock. Okay.
1 year down the line. I
Are
think
you
should hit
concerned
100.
about the capital raise?
I'm not.
We didn't
I'm
bring
not.
that up.
I mean, I did think that the capital raise was deliberately undersubscribed. I might be wrong, but I kind of
Deliberately
feel like
undersubscribed.
Yeah.
Oh, it worked out in their favor.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but I
Okay.
think it was deliberately undersubscribed.
Okay.
And then Zenith buy, strong buy actually. I
Okay.
do think that slightly undervalued.
You think it's
Yeah.
undervalued?
Like if you just take away the disappointment
Of the dividend.
of the dividend, and and if you remember, you're disappointed in the dividend because of GT. That's it. If you take away
Yeah.
GT, it's actually quite a strong dividend for them. But I mean,
But you know, was the
It's not a
market
strong
was the
dividend.
market
You
that
don't think
was
so?
the market
no,
that
the payout ratio
disappointed?
is like 12%.
Wait, now was the market that disappointed because the stock
what
only moved
about-
up about 5% when he
remember
announced.
that you're looking at the current dividend, but you have to look at dividend in total.
Yeah,
In
it's 5
term-
Naira now.
Yeah,
1
yeah, 5
plus-
Naira.
5 Naira is not impressive. For a business for a business, 125 billion of dividends for a 1 trillion,
Yeah.
for 1 trillion
Anyway,
company.
so Zenith buy for me, GT buy obviously.
Yeah.
Stanbic buy as well. I mean, I would want the share price to fall a little bit
To
more. Yeah, but
the right
still
issue was
buy.
at 50-50.
Still buy, yeah, for me. I mean, this is just greedy me now. Come on, allow that. Wema buy as well.
Okay.
Yeah, UBA buy.
So you're buying the whole
Fidelity.
bag.
Yeah,
Fidelity.
all of them. Fidelity, I would hold.
think so.
Yeah, because I think I mean, if I have Fidelity shares, I
Yeah.
probably would sell.
Oh,
Not
real
because,
sell?
yeah, not because
The
I
operating
don't believe in the
performance is
bank.
good, but the
yeah,
share price has
but I
gone
just
up.
think the share price is a little bit.
AKA, he
little bit-
doesn't have
a little bit-
Fidelity shares.
I do have, but
Okay.
right issue shares that is currently locked up. Yeah, so that will be my buy, sell, or hold across bank. But all banks, solid numbers, impressive numbers. And like Samson did mention, just shows you how much money to be made in Nigerian.
Acquisition wise, do you think there's some acquisitions around the corner that we don't know?
But I think
can we speculate to some
But there are a
acquisitions?
couple of banks that we haven't mentioned that I think are prime targets.
Like which one?
For an acquisition.
And who buy them?
Not even Polaris, listed banks.
Like which one?
I think they're prime targets. I just
Like which one? No, we're speculating, right?
You want to speculate?
No. I want
You know,
to
Will somebody ever buy GT?
I don't think so.
Someone buy GT?
I think
How
merger
much-
probably, but I don't think a merger. I don't think a buy.
If I was a strategic standard charter,
GT will be
or one
the
of
target,
those-
naturally. GT is the
Yeah.
target.
So,
Yeah,
but
that,
from
that book is as clean as you can.
Yeah, but I-
hypothetically,
Yeah.
hypothetically, what would that price be?
Me, I won't sell it until I won't sell. The minimum I will consider entertaining a conversation to sell is 150 naira.
GT.
But why
is
would
that
GT want to sell?
your current valuation for GT? 150.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, most banks are trading
Yeah.
at 2 times.
If you,
Yeah, I mean, I'm at 120.
I think that's conservative.
I think on a sustained
That's
basis,
conservative.
GT
No,
He
is the
said
1.5.
entertain
No,
the
I said that
conversation. He didn't say sell.
if the
Yeah.
broker calls me
Yeah.
and says somebody wants to buy on my GT shares,
Yeah.
and I say, what is he looking at? The only reason I will continue the conversation
is if you say
something
150.
around 150.
Yeah,
Anything
so
else,
yeah,
I'll
let's
drop,
talk.
I'll drop the phone.
I agree.
Interesting stuff. All right, so guys, it's been Drinks and Mics brought to you by Nairametrics, of course, in partnership with some of our friends at Lead Drop with the drinks, and of course UAC with the water on the table. And thanks for all the support, and for all of you that have been watching and commenting. We love you guys immensely, and thanks for pushing this. We know it's not your typical podcast. I mean, we say a lot of things that sometimes are over the top, but I mean, you can't blame these guys. We're all markets people.
Please
So
like,
it's
share,
often difficult.
comment. Please,
Yeah.
please like, share, comment. Thank you.
Amongst the network. And of course, we love feedback. Any feedback. Some of us, you have called us APC stalwart. I've seen that as well. Yes. I've seen that.
I'm so confused at
Somebody
that.
said we're not even,
I'm as
these guys are
apolitical as she
pro-market
comes.
guys, but they don't know that they are pro-business. I saw that as well. It's all good. I
We
mean,
love you.
It's all love for where we are.
Can you not be pro market and pro business at the same
No,
time?
but pro market and pro business it's very rare that you can be pro market and not be pro business.
Yeah.
I don't know.
because you
So
can't
they
be at
said
the same time.
they said we're not pro-market, but we're pro-business.
But we think we're pro market.
I mean, I really don't know. I don't know how you can be pro-business.
Wait, where did I didn't see that comment.
Yeah, it was some.
I
I'm
should-
not
I
a
should
PC,
relax.
man. I
just wanna make
I've said
money.
it here before. Like I
That's
didn't
all.
vote for this government, but I think Ashiwaju may turn out to be as consequential as OBJ. Let's see. Time
There you
will
go.
tell.
Hot
wait
take.
and
Hot
see.
take.
Yeah.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Drinks and
As
mics.
long as he can manage the political
Episode.
side. No.
Episode what? Is it 13 or 14?
14.
Episode 14.
guys.
Wow, 14 weeks.
14 and
Drinks
cheers
and
me
mics.
water. Sorry, guys.
Cheers. Cheers.
I don't understand. Arnold's drinking water. I don't understand.
So what happened?
And it's a wrap,
No,
guys.
I'm not feeling well.
It's a wrap.
Okay.